Good evening, everybody. Sincere apologies for the late start. Adila, can we please go ahead and do the roll call?
Mendoza.
Here.
Elpern.
Here.
Hernandez.
Here.
Chow.
Here.
Anya Budi.
Here.
Owen.
Here.
Artha.
Microphones aren't on.
Here. Good evening, everybody. Sorry we're starting late. What do we have first? Anya, do you have a?
Sure. Yes, I see. I move that the Board of Education approve tonight's meeting agenda as presented.
Second. Mendoza.
Here. Yes.
Elpern.
Yes.
Hernandez.
Yes.
Chow.
Yes.
Tanya Budi.
Yes.
Owen.
Yes.
Kartha.
Yes. Okay, first we will do superintendent and board remarks.
And thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. I'm going to take a little liberty and hold some of my comments off until we do a very special presentation. I'm going to call on our colleague John Gallagher, which is listed as B here, the D65202 Track Invitational Medal presentation. And if you can come to the microphone, please. And John, tell everyone who you are.
Hello, I'm John Gallagher. I'm a physical education teacher in District 65. I'm also one of the co-coordinators for the District 65/202 Track Invitational, held every year at ETHS High School. This year, we had a student athlete perform and won a medal at our event, and unfortunately, due to communication issues and errors on our part, he was unable to receive his medal at the podium that day. So we wanted to take this opportunity to officially recognize Brian Smith with his second place medal. So Brian, Mom, Dad, you want to come on up for a picture?
So congratulations once again. I was at the meet that day. It was a blustery Evanston spring day, and so we're really glad that Brian got his recognition as he was due in a formal setting. We have celebrated the end of the school year, and we're really happy about that as we go into the summer and into all of our preparations for the next school year. And I just want to recognize all of the educators, our administrators, our support staff who do such incredible work for District 65 day in and day out. It's to their credit that we celebrate students like Brian. We'll show a video in a few minutes that will celebrate another group of our students. And it just, we couldn't do this work without all of our colleagues. I want to take a moment to recognize one special colleague. It's my great honor and privilege to salute Joyce Bartz. We tease Joyce affectionately that she puts the special into special education. But as we've said throughout the last couple weeks, and as Joyce and I have been walking through the school district over the year and over the 5 years that we've been working together, Joyce does this job with love, and with a love for the children that she serves, with a love for the families that she has served, and a love for the school district that she has served. And when you take multiple decades of commitment and focus and attention and care and struggle and pushing forward to do the right thing by children, we have no better colleague than Joyce Bartz. And so I just want to take a formal moment to thank you for your distinguished service to the district. Thank you for everything you've done for children in Evanston and Skokie. And on behalf of the board and the senior cabinet team, Suni Kartha and I have a special gift for you that we'd like to give you. I'm not throwing, so.
Okay, great.
We'll go take another.
Thanks.
I also want to take a moment and recognize, like, along with everybody who does such tremendous work in the school district, several unsung heroes who are people who sit at this desk and sit at their desks upstairs and go through the schools day in and day out, work weekends, work long nights, are here until we're done tonight. We'll be back in the office tomorrow at 7:15 or 7:30. And as I look at these fine educators, I just want to say how much I admire you. And I want to make sure that the public knows how much I thank you and how much really the public thanks you for your work. So to Andalib Kelgati and Latarsha Green and to Kylie Klein and to Stacy Beardsley and to Joyce Bartz and to Beatrice Davis and to Rafael Bafemi and to Joaquin Stevenson. These are the senior team who work day in and day out for our children. And not often do we get a chance to say thank you. And I just want to, on behalf of me, say thank you, and on behalf of the community, say thank you. And I'd like you to give a round of applause to this. Adila, are we ready? We want to celebrate the end of the school year. This is a scene that you would see in every school. This happens to be the Lincolnwood fifth grade class. But take this as the children of District 65 and watch very closely and enjoy and tap your foot as you go along. Can you start over? We'll do take two in a second.
wanna cut me down. I'm gonna send a bird, gonna drown out. This is brave, this is bruised, this is who I'm meant to be. This is me.
This is me. This is District 65. Thank you for an outstanding school year. And those are my comments.
Are there any board comments? Well, I just want to take a couple of minutes. I know that there are other speakers who have much more to say and will probably say it more eloquently than I do, but I do want to note and honor Joyce Bartz as she sits here at her last board meeting. It hardly seems possible. Don't look so excited. But my experience with Joyce has been as a fierce and tireless advocate for students in this district and for families in this district. And I remember as we were starting discussions around equity and beyond diversity and really getting district buy-in into equity trainings, Joyce was one of the strongest voices from the start that understood and pushed for the urgency of this work. So we are losing a really dedicated and important voice for our community. And I just want to thank you for the years of your service. And I know others will speak to it more eloquently than I will, but I did want to just say thank you.
Thank you, Suni, very much. Thank you.
Then with that, we will move on to public comments. Okay, so members of the public are welcome and invited to address the Board of Education during open public meetings. Speakers are discouraged from using the public comment period to air concerns about or voice personal attacks against specific district employees, being mindful that the public comment period is not a suitable forum for fact-finding or resolution of disputes. Rather, we strongly encourage members of the public who have concerns about specific district employees to communicate with us following district communication guidelines available in our student handbook. Please remind everyone that you have 3 minutes and to state your name when you come up. So our first speaker, Tanya Hamler.
Hello, my name is Tanya Humbler. I'm the mother of Sadie Walson, who has completed her first year as a 4th grader with King Labs under the Options for Special Needs. Sadie's home school was Oakton, which she attended since kindergarten. We struggled with day-to-day IEP and support until last year we were introduced to the King Arts Option class. We were very excited about the program. We took time to conduct a tour and meet with the teachers. At the end, we decided that King Labs would be the best fit, representing themselves as a school for special needs, and had the team to support the children. Until of April of 2019, things were looking very good. Then an unfortunate event involving Ms. Schwartz to be removed from the school left a hole in the foundation of King Lab's special needs class. The event is not a cause, rather a lack of a plan. This caused a cascade of events that was felt by all parties and shed the light to the fact that King Arts nor District 65 have the emergency preparation plans to support their students. Over 35 business days went by until the end of the school year came upon us. The lack of a special ed substitute could not be found, leaving the class to be managed by classroom aides and other teachers to try to perform the daily needs of special educational teacher. There has, in my opinion, been insufficient leadership and communication regarding the situation that took place. The next step, planning and directing, who would be filling the role of the special ed teacher, no homework sent home, no information related to school activities, the inability to reschedule meetings or be able to speak with a substitute teacher without going through other teachers. After many emails and phone calls to school, I felt dismissed, unheard, and ignored. Then came the IEP meeting last week. I found the team sitting before me organized and well prepared. I would say that each person in that meeting did their part. They were professional and provided a rounded assessment of progress, recommending goals and modifications for my daughter. I felt there might be hope. From my viewpoint, it was very clear that Ms. Schwartz was the binding person who attempted to bring together all the different support teams and the single communication channel to the parents. With no emergency preparation plan in place when she was removed in April, the effects were well seen and felt. All parties suffered: children, teachers, staff, and parents. If King Arts has represented themselves as a school to support special needs children, there needs to be a clear curriculum to cover GE courses with modifications from band to science, etc., in addition to the special educational requirements. When I look back at what took place over the past few months, the positive aspect to all of these events is what did we learn and how can we do better? I know King Arts and District 65 can be successful in educating and supporting special needs children. A plan of action is called upon to act, communicate, educate, lead, provide to a mission of success. I know this can be achieved. What will Evanston's success story be? Thank you.
Next, we have Kara Hunwick.
Good evening. My name is Kara Hunwick, and I am the parent of 3 District 65 students. I have a 7th grader, 5th grader, and 1st grader. I am here this evening to speak about our experience with special education. My 6-year-old son, Sean, has Down syndrome and started receiving special ed services at the district on his 3rd birthday. He attended JEH for 2.5 years, and we were pleased with the programming and services he received there. His kindergarten year that just ended was full of changes and transitions. He started the year in a K-2 special education class with minutes in gen ed for calendar, math, social centers, related arts, PE, lunch, and recess. In October, we got a call stating the special ed class was going to be split into 2 different classes, and Sean and a few students would be moved out of the existing class to a classroom down the hall. The reason for this change was that the needs of the students were varied so much they could not be served in the same classroom. That was the reason I was given. The new teacher that would be teaching Sean started his day at Bessie Rhodes, which has an earlier start time, and this teacher did not arrive at Dawes until 10. So Sean's new schedule would be start his day with the original special ed teacher, then at 10 o'clock switch to the new teacher. The new teacher had to leave early because of the earlier start time. So when he left early, Sean would then end the day back with the first special education teacher, all the while also transitioning during the day for his gen ed minutes, related arts, etc. You can imagine how upsetting this was to us and the kids as we're putting our trust in the system and all these changes are happening. Also, at Dawes, the gen ed classroom for kindergarten happened to be in a different building. So for Sean to access his gen ed classroom, he had to walk down the hall, outside, across the playground, and into a separate building. When I went to introduce myself to the new teacher that was taking over, I was disappointed to see that the classroom was not yet outfitted properly. There were no books, toys, posters, manipulatives that would indicate this was a classroom for kindergartners. I immediately shared my concerns and was assured that supplies would be ordered. However, it took several weeks for the classroom to be properly equipped. A few weeks after this change was made, I got word that this new teacher had resigned and they were making a plan to find a permanent sub for the rest of the year. A permanent sub was hired just before winter break. So all of these changes happened prior to winter break. This permanent sub happened to be a retired special education teacher from the district and was hired for the remainder of the year. The remainder of the year was stable for the rest of the year, except in January when I was notified that the general education class that he spent time with would now be changed and he would be spending time in a different gen ed class. We felt throughout the year that he was a visitor in gen ed rather having a home there. You see, he was not on the gen ed teacher's class list, so we were never really notified of class happenings, birthday parties, certain projects he was not a part of. Despite our obvious frustrations, I would like to note that the actual teachers, aides, therapists that worked with him this year have all been caring, responsive, hardworking individuals. This year has left my husband and I feeling frustrated. We decided to call a meeting with district-level administration to share our experiences, express our concerns, and ask for clarification on the plan going forward. At this meeting, we were told about the options program at King Arts that was just spoken of. We were told that this program was started many years ago to serve students like Sean so that they could have a school experience with their gen ed peers while also receiving the special ed services and accommodations they need. This sounded like what we wanted for our son, so we started to do our research by requesting a tour, reaching out to families who had children in the program, and trying to find information about this program at King Arts. We were unable to really find any of this information, but did connect with other families that are here tonight, and I was disappointed to hear some of them are having the similar concerns that we have had at our school this year. So I'm here tonight to advocate for my child and all the students in the district receiving special education. The district can and must do better in their planning and implementation of services and support so that all students and families feel included and part of the school community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Abby Garcia.
Good evening. My name is Abby Garcia. My son is Dominic Garcia, and he just finished fourth grade over at King Arts through their options program. This was our first year at the school. The decision to move our child out of his home school of Oakton was due to his limited progress academically. While he was doing well socially, and I felt like he had a home at Oakton, we felt like he wasn't getting supported sufficiently academically. There was no consistency in his instruction. For example, in second grade, touch math was introduced. He was doing really well. I was told the next year this should continue, no problems there. However, in third grade, I was told that they didn't have the workbooks for touch math. Communication was lacking overall. Teachers weren't communicating well with each other to modify Dominic's work. There was poor communication from teachers to parents. So after 4 years of school at Oakton and many meetings, we were frustrated. Our special services supervisor at the time told us about the options program at King Arts. And while Dominic's home base would be that options classroom, we were told that he would, of course, still have time in gen ed with his peers. So when I asked, how is this program different and how would it benefit my son? I was told that at King Arts they're more collaborative, the communication will be better, that they have more experience with working with kids with special needs. So it sounded like a good choice, and at this point we were frustrated and looking for a change. So as much as it didn't sit well with me and my husband that Dominic would be in a more restricted environment, being in kind of a more self-contained room, we went ahead and switched over to King Arts. Once in the program, we found these statements to be false. The only teacher that communicated really well was Mrs. Schwartz, Dominic's special education teacher. I reached out to Dominic's gen ed teacher to find out how he was doing in her classroom with modified work, and she really wasn't able to tell me what was going on with him in the class and deferred me back over to his special ed teacher. Therefore, when Mrs. Schwartz had to leave the classroom, we saw all forms of communication break down. So unless we as parents reached out for information, we weren't told what was going on with our children. You know, he's not the type of child to come home and tell me all about his day. You know, his language is the most delayed portion of his disability. So communication from staff is extremely important. And of course, for us as parents to help support at home whatever's happening at school, I mean, communication is key. So by the end of the year, you know, the end of the year was quite disappointing to say the least. We felt Dominic was quite excluded. So we've tried a more inclusive setting, and we've also tried a more restrictive, self-contained room setting. And we feel inclusion is definitely a much better choice, but needs a lot of work in the district. You know, our son deserves to be accepted socially and grow academically, and there should be a curriculum in place that can be followed by a substitute or the next grade level teacher as Dominic progresses. There needs to be time allotted to allow communication between special ed teachers and general education teachers in all subjects in order for them to collaborate and do what's best for each child. But all the change needs to occur from the top leaders. The administration needs to put forth the mindset and culture for the schools. There have to be expectations of the staff in regards to what an inclusive environment means. There needs to be more support for teachers in order for them to have time to collaborate. And I believe the district would benefit maybe from an evaluation by an inclusion specialist to find out what we can do to improve our special education system. Like Cara said, all the staff, that his therapists and his special ed teacher have been great, but you know, I do hear that they just don't have the time, you know, to collaborate with one another to do the things that need to be done for him. So honestly, if we all believe every child, every day, whatever it takes, let's figure out how to accomplish this vision for all of our children together. Thank you.
Jocelyn Griffin.
Hello, my name is Jocelyn Griffin. I think most of you are familiar with my face. I am Oakton proud. My kids started out at Oakton, and we had a great experience there. We loved it. I have 2 SPED kids, and I think my reason for being here, and kind of collectively why I combine with the other parents, is that we really want to find a way to partner with you. We want to find a way to hold the district accountable, but also to hold ourselves accountable with providing solutions and being present to be involved. The video that you showed was amazing, and my gen ed son benefits from that. But I think what we're collectively feeling is, where are the SPED kids? Are they doing this? Are they feeling and receiving the same message? Because really, our experience has been that our kids are kind of like annexed in this area of the school and not part of the school, not participating with it. And it affects their self-esteem, it affects their social skill development, and it really hurts our hearts. I think you've heard from a lot of parents about how they feel about things have gone at King Arts, and I think collectively, we appreciate the staff, and we know that what happened this year was unforeseen, and everyone did their best. But I think it was a great opportunity for parents and staff to identify ways that the district could improve in communication and collaboration and involving the kids. So we wanted to work with you to provide solutions. And I wanted to just share what my daughter's transition from Oakton to King Arts was like, because I think it's pretty indicative window of what a lot of SPED kids and parents are feeling. Last summer, 2 to 3 days before the first day of school, I received a phone call from the SPED Services Department informing me that my daughter would now be attending King Arts, if I was amenable, that is. I responded that I was most definitely not amenable to this transfer. In fact, I would need time to research the school, talk to parents, meet the principal, see the school. I was then informed that King Arts was a good school. It was a great opportunity to receive this offer, and Anaya wouldn't have, she wouldn't really have somewhere to be if she didn't go, because the reason she couldn't be at Oakton anymore was their sped room stopped at second grade. I insisted that Anaya should have had the whole summer to process this change. She should have had an opportunity to say goodbye to her peers. And furthermore, she was in the ACC Magnet program, which had great effects on her self-esteem. We just loved Oakton. We didn't want to leave. I tried to make my decision as quickly as I could because I felt very pressured with at least 2 phone calls a week asking me if I had decided. And passive things. They told my daughter that she had to bring lunch because they had transferred her to King Arts despite my refusal. So they said she wasn't on the lunch list. They told me that she couldn't be in this bedroom because she'd already been transferred to King Arts and wasn't technically an Oakton student. I had to become very assertive and point out the legal violations in order for her to be allowed into this bedroom. And I did bring her lunch the first 2 days of school. I just brought my daughter to King Arts without knowing anything about it because I felt pressured. And we luckily had a great experience. But she's not on the Gen Ed roster. She doesn't get invited to the things. A lot of the awards that they have are for character things like kindness, commitment, friendship, honesty. These are things that SPED kids abound in. These are their character traits, and they notice. They are not completely unaware. They come home and they ask, why didn't I get an award? And it's even more insulting because they're brought to the ceremony to watch their Gen Ed peers get the award. And they're not on the Gen Ed roster. We don't know about this stuff. So we made a list of things that we really think would be helpful, things that we're willing to commit to doing with you. We want to support you. One of the reasons we stay at Evanston is because when Evanston sees problems, the attitude, the heart, and the response is how can we do better? How can we include? We love District 65, and we want our kids to be part of it.
Alan Lonnquist.
Hello, my name is Ellen Lonnquist. I have a son in, I guess he's going to be a rising 6th grader at King Arts. When I first decided to speak tonight, I thought it would be easy. After all, we're in a pretty good place inclusion-wise at King Arts. My son is in the Gen Ed classroom. Options is his resource room. But as I reviewed our experience, like people are naming, I realized there was a lot to be learned about what it has taken for us to get into this space. I want to be clear that I don't doubt the dedication and devotion of staff and teachers and most of the people in this room to doing the best they can. But as we've all heard, intent is not the same as impact, and impact is what I'm talking about tonight. My son has Down syndrome and is hard of hearing. When my son started preschool at JEH, I didn't know as much as I do now. I was not told that there were options for inclusion in the preschool, so I signed him up for the self-contained class and watched him lose the little language that he had over the next few months. I refused the placement for the following year, and with the district support, we did an outplacement at a school for the deaf and hard of hearing and dysplanes. The teachers and staff there were great, though it was still a self-contained room. I started researching education. The district paid for a taxi and an aide to drive him the 45 minutes each way every day. I can only imagine how much that adds up to every year, so I'm just going to put that out there. Because all the families in this program came a great distance, he had no friends to be with on the weekend. He liked his teachers, but hated the drive. At some point, he cried every single day before getting into the car. And it wasn't the drivers, because they were Evanston locals, and he loved seeing them around. My daughter was attending King Arts. I wanted my kids at the same school, one that had some experience with inclusion, and I don't know what I was writing there, excuse me, with some commitment to it. I advocated for King Arts when I realized our homeschool didn't even mention special education on their website at the time. That was 10 years ago. I don't know, I haven't checked it since. I had spoken with teachers, social workers, administrators, and other parents. I'd been reading. It wasn't enough. And I still watched my son sit alone on weekends and cry every day before the taxi picked him up. I hired an advocate who helped us get to where we believed would be best, and my son started at King Arts. It hasn't been perfect. We've had our ups and downs. My job allows me the flexibility to work odd hours, so I can be at the school to ask questions, to offer support, and build relationships. I've gone to inclusion conferences with teachers and Dr. Brown in different years. I've challenged practices that were problematic and been supported in trying to change that within the school, and I've tried to help support the school to reach its own goals. My son is learning. He works hard to learn with his peers, though academically he's at a much different level. He has friends. When he is alone on the weekend now, it's because we're tired and we don't want to go out. He doesn't cry on the way to school anymore. In fact, he gets really mad at me when I tell him it's Saturday and he's not supposed to go to school. He works hard, I work hard, and the staff works hard and will continue to do so. Our story in many ways is the success story of what inclusion looks like. And I want you to understand how much work it has taken and how much collaboration, all the things that parents are talking about, we have done, but it's been a lot of work. There are models for it. If teachers could learn what they already know, and if we had people available to support more district-wide training around what that looks like, I know that's been a wish for the district, and I wish it too. So, thank you very much.
David Wolkowitz.
Hello. The problems I'm going to discuss seem a lot easier to solve than the issues I just heard about. This has to do with the policy regarding advancing students. In other words, moving them from one level to the next level up. My experiences with my daughter who just graduated 6th grade, she's been in the district since 2nd grade. She hasn't been challenged really once in math the whole time. I'm talking about every year, every class, every teacher. And I'm not saying it's the teacher's fault, but for her in particular, it's way too easy. And I'm guessing a number of other students, because I've seen the math, and I've seen almost no progress in the difficulty of math. So that led me this year to finally being so frustrated with the lack of challenge she gets in school, to the point where I don't know why she's in math class. And I'm not exaggerating, because I take the effort to teach her math at home, and I know she learns nothing really from class. It's a very inefficient use of time. So finally I'm here today, ended up looking up some things on the website about placement, advancing, etc. So that's what brought me here. And numerous years I've spoken to teachers, and what I keep hearing is, next year something's going to be challenging. It's not. When my daughter was, before she reached 6th grade, I went to speak to the principal at Chute, where she attends. Nothing against this guy, but he said it was going to be challenging. He said the teacher was good and middle school is different. It turned out not to be, in that she's still not challenged at all. Why am I even here wasting everyone's time? That's because the solution here is very easy. Advance my daughter to Algebra 1 in 7th grade. Okay, so that's an easy solution. Why should a parent come and have to beg for their student who scores relatively high on these placement tests and has a 97% in math and has basically perfect behavior per every teacher she's had? Why does a parent have to go to these lengths just to get an easy solution like moving a kid up? It doesn't make any sense. So I don't know how much the board knows about how students are placed. But there's basically 2 tests. There's the MAP test and the district test, okay? And the results of these tests are placed on a chart, or there's a chart that's essentially a key to where a student places in math. There's a y-axis, x-axis, okay? And where the scores intersect, you look at that spot and you see where a kid should be placed. The problem is that can lead to absurd results, which indicates that method of placing students is no good at all. For example, what I mean is this. Say a student takes the math test and scores in the 99.9999th percentile, okay, of all students, right? And then let's say the score in math is 100%, has a 100% every year in math and perfect behavior. What is that time? Are we on 1 minute or 2 minutes? 3 minutes already? Well, I'm sorry, it's not nearly enough. We watched a video for several minutes. So this chart leads to an absurd result where a student can get a perfect score essentially on one of the placement tests and a perfect score in math class. But because then the second placement test is less than the chart indicates it should be to be advanced, the child won't be advanced. Kids should be challenged in school if they want to be challenged, not subject to a bogus enforcement of different placement exams. By the way, I think the placement exams are improperly used. Standardized tests are best used to compare student performance across different systems, as a college does when comparing student performance in different schools and essentially different school systems. Here, this is D65. Isn't the best indicator of a student's level of achievement and ability to move on getting very good scores in the level that they're at? I think so. And if it's not, then there's a severe problem in the way the testing works, in that it's not matched up with what actually happens in class, okay? So
Thank you.
I encourage everyone to look at the chart and think about these results, and I would like to say that any board member who wishes to contact me can contact me at the following email address, dwconduit@gmail.com. And I'm going to prepare some written materials fleshing out all of these problems.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Marlene Grossman. Is Marlene here?
I think she's going to talk later about special ed.
Oh, okay. Heather Sweeney.
Hi, I'm Heather Sweeney, and I have a student at Nichols Middle School. I'm here to speak on behalf of the Nichols parent community. As you know, the Nichols parent community shares the Nichols administration and staff concerns about the enrollment increase that has disproportionately impacted Nichols and our kids over the last couple years. We thank the administration for the written response to the initial letter from the Nichols parent community. Tonight, we wanted to inquire about progress made on solutions to the overcrowding issue. In a letter to the District 65 administration from the Nichols parent community, we presented several concerns about the reasons for the overcrowding and some proposed solutions. We view some proposed solutions as easier to implement, such as halting permissive transfers, and some solutions as more long-term, such as re-examining the role of the two magnet schools and school boundaries. We also asked for additional support staff, particularly mental health support, and requested confirmation of this new staff for the new school year. We're committed to our school and an optimal educational setting for all of the District 65 middle school students. We look forward to hearing what steps will be taken to address Nichols overcrowding so that Nichols doesn't exceed capacity and so that all Nichols students are educated and cared for as they deserve to be in District 65. Thank you.
Ellen King.
Hi, I'm Ellen King. I have a now 7th grader at Nichols. First off, I want to thank you, Hall. I've never been to a school board meeting, and I can't imagine, honestly, something that would be less pleasant to sit through all the time. Not that we're not pleasant, but it's just thank you for all your work. I have a 7th grader at Nichols, and I honestly was pretty oblivious to middle school. I mean, my middle school was, not a great experience, so I kind of feel like that's middle school. But my son loves school, and kind of what he's experienced is, I think, really due to really crowded school. I know that this sixth grade class at Nichols was one of the largest that had ever come in. The principal's amazing. He does a fantastic job dealing with so many kids, but some of the issues like lunch, my son talks about lunch and not being able to have time to eat because they're in the hallway because there's so many of them lined up, because there are literally just so many of these sixth graders. And sixth grade boys and girls are unruly as it is, so when you have an abundance of them, even if it's overcrowded by a little, it feels like times two just because they're so hard to control. So I would appreciate anything that the board could do to really look into maybe not having permissive transfers for the 7th and other grades that are coming in that are exceeding capacity, because it is a serious issue that is really impacting the everyday learning for someone like my son who wants to be there. Me, I probably would have been fine with it because, being lost in the crowd was a good thing. But for a lot of these kids, it really is difficult. And then the school itself has so many other issues. It's an old school. It needs some updating. And so when you have so many people with the wear and tear, it really is a serious concern that I would really encourage you to look into. Thank you very much for your time.
And our final speaker will be Meg Crewley.
Good evening. My name is Meg Crewley. I live at 1425 Church Street here in Evanston. I was born and raised in Evanston, went to Evanston schools, raised my family in Evanston, who also attended Evanston schools. I've been an educator in the district for almost 20 years. I'm deeply rooted in the community and have a strong connection to the schools, students, families, and caregivers. My current role is the president of the District 65 Educators Council, the union representing more than 750 educators from Evanston Skokie schools, and I'm here tonight speaking in this role. There has been much conversation going on around the success and achievement of our students in the district, especially our students of color. We acknowledge that our students of color, especially our African American students, are not achieving at the level that we would like, and that our community and families and caregivers deserve. We understand and we share the concerns regarding test scores and racial disparity in the district. We will continue to do our personal equity work while accepting the challenges to make appropriate changes for our students. We must work together, continue to listen to each other, community, families, caregivers, educators, and administrators. In this, we stand with our families and students. We know that building relationships with our students is essential in helping students to learn, understand, grow new knowledge. We believe in culturally responsive pedagogy and are working to be more deliberate and effective in our teaching and strategies. We believe in maintaining high expectations for learners, including our students of colors, and creating avenues to help support students in meeting these expectations. We will push for policies and programs that address and acknowledge an environment that supports our community of learners. While we know there's much work to be done, we are committed to racial equity within our district and will continue to act towards this goal because it's important for each and every student. We want to make you aware of some things DEC is doing already to address some of the race-related issues in our district. DEC brought Black Lives Matter at School Week of Action to our schools. This was the first time we have ever honored this week before, and moving forward, we have plans to reach beyond students and staff to include our families, caregivers, and community members in the week's events next year. We are proud to be part of this national movement of organizing for racial justice in education. This week reminds us to ensure students, educators, families, and caregivers must enforce our values for an equitable and racially just public school system by engaging in action, empowerment, and solidarity in District 65 and beyond. We also recognize that this is a first step, and we are continuing to work with the administration, supporting us as we look at our curriculum to make sure that students of all backgrounds are represented consistently and more fully, and not just during a single week or month throughout the year. This is a high priority for us. Additionally, we're working with the district to prioritize the hiring of teachers of color in our district. We believe in the importance of developing the racial consciousness of all of our educators through professional development such as SEED, Seeking Educational Equity and Diversity, and Courageous Conversations. In the new collective bargaining agreement, we ensured opportunities for professional development for educators around the district, priorities, and incorporated restorative practices and positive student supports in addition to disciplinary responses. It's important to repeat, DEC is committed to continuing the dialogue, to working together with the board, administration, families, caregivers, students, and the community around improving the quality of education for our students, especially our students of color. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on, Lindsay, can you take the...
I move that the Board of Education accept the recommendations outlined in the attached group motion and approve the personnel, appointments, leaves, and separations, dismissal of educational support staff, May 2019 Board and Committee meeting minutes, destruction of April 2017 closed session audio recording, April 2019 budget amendment and treasurer's report, annual safety survey, gift acceptance for Kingsley and Lincolnwood, FY20 click insurance renewal, premium payment FY20, FY20 self-workers compensation renewal, premium payment, FY20 prevailing wage, FY20 working cash fund transfer, security contract with Phoenix, Zoom transportation contract, ESS substitute contract, housekeeping supply bid recommendation.
Second.
Mendoza?
Yes.
Milford?
Yes.
Hernandez?
Yes.
Chow?
Yes.
Tanya Vudi?
Yes.
Cohen?
Yes.
Cartha? Yes.
And if I may interrupt, with that vote, the board has just approved our recommendation for the new principal of Kingsley Elementary School. And it's just a distinct honor to welcome back to Evanston David Davis, who was a teacher here at Oakton for 7 years, and has since done a wonderful journey in multiple school districts in River Forest and Winnetka and Westchester. He has 3 master's degrees. He's a fabulous educator, cares deeply about the issues that Ms. Crewley just talked about, and is totally committed to students. So it's with great pleasure to welcome back David Davis as the new principal of Kingsley Elementary.
Thank you so much, and I'm extremely excited to be back in District 65, and I have a short but sweet, hopefully, statement that I'd like to read. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to have the principalship at Kingsley School. I respect the foundation that Ms. Murray and the teachers and students and families have laid there. I'm looking forward to working together to create an inclusive learning environment to meet the needs of all of our students. And again, I just can't say how much and how excited I am to be back in District 65, to have the chance to work with all of you and to work with all of the students here in D65. So thank you so much.
Thank you, and welcome back. We will move on to the ratification of the contract between the District 65 Board of Education and the District 65 Evanston Teachers Assistant Association. Rebecca, you've got that?
Yeah, I move that the Board of Education approve and direct the board president to execute the collective bargaining agreement between the Board of Education and the Evanston Teachers Assistant Association in substantially the form of the agreement presented to the board.
Second.
Mendoza?
Yes.
Hilpern?
Yes.
Hernandez?
Yes.
Chow?
Yes.
Tanya Vudi?
Yes.
Cohen?
Yes.
Cartha? Yes. Let's go ahead and do the next motion, and then we can...
I move that the Board of Education approve and direct the board president to execute the collective bargaining agreement between the Board of Education and the District 65 Educators Council in substantially the form of the agreement presented to the board.
Second.
Mendoza?
Yes.
Hilpern?
Yes.
Hernandez?
Yes.
Chow?
Yes.
Tanya Vudi?
Yes.
Cohen?
Yes.
Cartha? Yes. If I can just take a moment to celebrate. What the applause that you are hearing is for months of really intense, dedicated work by many of the people around this table, many of our colleagues who are in the audience. We are working on preparing joint statements that will give some more context to the agreements that were just approved here tonight and have been ratified by our union colleagues. But I just wanted to take a moment right now to just thank Dawn Jackson and Meg Crewley. And each of their respective bargaining teams, to thank our bargaining team here. You know, it was a really intense, at sometimes, you know, contentious, but always collaborative process. And I think that's what I really appreciate from this. And the fact that we have these 2 5-year contracts that we can celebrate at the end of the school year, that our educators and our paraprofessionals can go into their summers and start the school year next year knowing that we have contracts in place, I think is a wonderful thing. It provides us as a district with some certainty and stability as we embark over the next few years and thinking about how we structure our district financially. And so I just, again, want to give a really big thanks to the union presidents and their bargaining teams. This was an incredible process, and I hope one that sets us up for future collaborative work in the district. So thank you very much.
If I may, let me echo President Cartha's comments. We entered into the bargaining for both units in what's called interest-based bargaining, which meant that we were actually talking to each other about the issues that so concern us in the district and really working through a collaborative process rather than a positional or oppositional process. And we did this over months. And to the credit, again, as Suni mentions, of Dawn and Meg and your wonderful teams and our wonderful team, we move forward for kids. We move forward for the district, and we've established the type of collaborative relationships that are going to be absolutely necessary as we go through the next 5 years. And the next 5 years, we're going to have to think about the structure of the district. We're going to have to think about some of the finances that we will potentially hit bumps on. We will hit bumps on. And creating the collaborative relationships that we've done through this process sets us up for a bright future and sets us up to really do the right thing by children. The other thing, from what I've heard, it's rather unprecedented to have 2 major bargaining units work with us and have these processes concluded before the end of the school year. So we left the school year and we leave the school year in celebration. We're able to move forward into the year to come and the years to come, both with excitement, with collaboration, and with a keen focusing on many of the challenges and problems that we have, like many of the parents who spoke tonight spoke out. So I just congratulate and tip my hat to both DEC and to ETAA and to all the players who played so hard to make this a successful bargaining process.
Thank you very much. All right. We will move on then to the approval of the school discipline policy. Sergio?
I move that the Board of Education approve the school discipline policy as presented.
Second.
Do we have any update on this?
On LEAP or, I mean...
Is there any way we can get a quick update on what, if anything, has changed since it was presented at the last policy committee meeting?
Of course, sorry. So Yes, I mean, one of the things that we added was the behavior continuum. So at the discussion, the procedural elements that were agreed in the tentative agreement were added to the policy, as well as naming the need to ensure that there's an annual review of procedures and policies between a parent, teacher, district discipline policy. So those are the 3 areas that were added based on our feedback from the last policy meeting.
Great, thank you.
And that linkage actually between the work that was being done on the policy and the bargaining processes was really important. We spent a considerable amount of time as colleagues talking about safety, talking about restorative practices, talking about moving away from punitive practices and creating the continuum, a behavior continuum, so we could actually do that sort of work. And so again, credit to our DEC colleagues to be able to give us some of that feedback as we were fine-tuning this policy as well.
Absolutely.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, can we do the?
Mendoza?
Yes.
Hilton?
Yes.
Hernandez?
Yes.
Chow?
Yes.
Tanya Vudi?
Yes.
Owen? Yes. Partha?
Yes. We have the approval of the District 65 Wellness Policy. Candace?
I move that the Board of Education approve and adopt the District 65 Wellness Policy as amended.
Second.
Second.
And then Stephanie, did you have any?
Stephanie has a presentation.
Yeah.
I had a short presentation, if that's okay.
Yes, no, please.
Okay.
Give us a second.
It's going to come up or not. Yeah. It's okay. I can start talking, and then as it comes up. First, I just want to highlight, thank you for welcoming me back. Highlight that the Wellness Council has come back to District 65, and we have started this year with 21 members on the council representing 11 different schools, a representative from ETHS, and community members. This year, the accomplishments have included creating a kickoff that you're all invited to, everyone. It's on October 5th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. at James Park. And it's a fun walk and wellness fair, and we're just thrilled as a council to really encourage the kickoff to wellness is really coming back as a main focus here in District 65. And so, as well as bringing this wellness policy, we wanted to just bring this idea of that we really want wellness to be this focus moving forward once again, as it has been in the past. The major policy changes as proposed are that District 65 staff members would now be required to use non-food items as incentives. Food served during the school day will need to be commercially prepared, whole intact food, or food that is prepared in a school garden following the garden procedures. And that teachers and staff will follow food safety procedures, including being aware of students' food allergies, restricting allergens in the classroom, and ensuring that tables and desks are wiped down as food is eaten. We feel these are very important for the health and safety of our students. Now, we want to, per your suggestion, we went about doing a number of input gathering from the last time I spoke with you. One of those pieces was to look at the Alliance for Healthier Generations tools. This is an organization that works with 42,000 schools to empower school communities to move more, eat healthier, develop healthier habits. And as our schools took this inventory, two of the biggest action steps recommended was prohibiting using food as reward or punishment, and to ensure that all food served to the students meet the Smart Snack rules, which is just another way of saying meet our District 65 nutrition requirements. Additionally, we surveyed teachers, administrators, and parent, caregiver, guardians. We sent this survey in English, Spanish, and French.
We sent it to all teachers in the district, to all administrators in the district, and to select parent groups, trying to ensure that we had representation from many different racial and ethnic groups. And you can see on the slide there, including groups at 2A Immersion, ELL, AFHW, ABC, ACC, and PTA Council. We had 100 teachers respond, 70 parents, and 8 administrators. A couple of highlights that a couple of those results we wanted to highlight was that 51% of teachers, 75% of administrators, and 65% of parents surveyed shared that food is currently used in their building as part of celebrations. 18% of teachers, 34% of parents, homemade food is being served. 21% of teachers, 24% of parents, only commercially prepared food is served. The one that really got us was that 25% of teachers surveyed responded that food is being used on a daily basis in their building for our children. 25% of principals said the food is being used on a weekly basis as a reward, and that 22% and 28% surveyed that candy, sweets, pizza, and soda are those rewards. This is not what the Wellness Council is recommending for our children. We want our children to know that rewards can be physically active, that rewards can be so many other things that have nothing to do with candy, sweets, pizza, and soda. In fact, some of our results also included that, we currently have one school in this district with a complete no food policy. A second principal specifically reaching out saying with her name that she would like her school to have a no food policy if this board would support it. Now, this policy that I'm presenting today on behalf of the Wellness Council does not recommend a no food policy. However, it's something that we may want to consider in the future. The biggest benefits to this policy change that were given by these survey results was, number one, food safety. We need to keep our children safe. Number two, creating healthy habits for our children and ensuring that they know how to be healthy in their future. And the third was being more inclusive for students with allergies, which brings us to the racial equity impact assessment. In that assessment, we were able to identify and find positive impacts for stakeholders such as children with allergies, children with religious beliefs around food, and possibly our low-income families, which I'll explain in a moment, in that these children can be included in celebrations in a way that they haven't been in the past. This is a chance for our children who have these food allergies that now can be part of these celebrations. They can be part of being active. They can be part of an art project. They can be part of a dance party, right? And negative impacts expressed. This idea of low-income families both had positive and negative impacts in our assessment and what we got back in results. Part of that being, if you're going to have a celebration with no food, how wonderful. There's no need for anyone to feel less than or more than for what kind of food they provide at the party, right? But also, it was noted in our assessment that if food is asked, that it does tend to be more expensive to buy food commercially prepared than to prepare it at home. However, as a council, we would really encourage families to look for things like clementines that are whole and intact, that do not have to be commercially prepared, that are whole and ready to eat. Other things to reduce disparities are to look for, I missed one. And that another impacted group would be our Latinx families, knowing that our Latinx families have high value on sharing food in celebration and sharing the home-cooked meals that they've provided. And so another way that we're really looking to partner with our PTA Council is to encourage PTA-sponsored events where we can have those cultural food included. And then And then lastly on this piece is that just today, and so it was amended in your packets for today, how it wouldn't have been in the public packet, is that Jill Anderson had brought forth a amendment, principal at Park School. And that is that in this assessment, we did find that one of the stakeholders that would be impacted were students with special needs. And so and I'm going to go ahead and read it for those that don't have it in your packet. Number 8, District 65 staff members are required to use non-food items as incentives. Amendment A. An exception will be made for students who have documented edible reinforcement as an accommodation or in their behavior intervention plan as determined by the IEP team. This team includes, but is not limited to, the special education teachers, school administration, related service professionals, nurses, and parents. IEP teams should consider if healthier alternatives to edible reinforcements would be effective and strive to fade this type of reinforcement over time. Since this amendment was suggested today, I have not been able to recommend that to the Wellness Council. However, Stephanie Abudaya, I'm recommending that to you as that amendment to the policy as presented because of this racial equity assessment and the idea that we want to ensure that all of our students have their needs met. And if this is a piece for our special education students, we want to make sure that they have that need met as well. Lastly, on one of the policy committee had asked for an implementation plan, and we are happy to provide one. We would love to present a slideshow of the policy changes in the fall that would be presented to all of our schools on the Institute Days proceedings, the start of school. All teachers' PTAs will be given informative flyers in multiple languages as to the impact and rationale of the policy changes, and include a web link to allow families to see if food meets these nutritional guidelines, as well as snack examples. These were all things identified in our surveys that parents were and teachers were specifically looking for in this rollout plan. Teachers asked in the survey for a list of non-food incentive ideas, which of course will be provided by the Wellness Council. And we do look to survey again next year to see what supports are needed. So moving forward, we do ask the board if you will support this wellness policy with the amendment to it. And we hope that that we can work together on implementing this in a very positive way to help ensure the safety of our students. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that, and thank you so much for hearing our feedback at the policy committee meeting, and for all the work, clearly, that you've done since then to gather all of this information, to think through thoughtfully what implementation would look like. So I just thank you very much. This is fantastic. Are there any other questions or comments?
I just want to clarify, with or without the amendment, Joyce, if a student has that in their IEP, they do it, right? Great. So the amendment, whether it's in there or not, doesn't matter.
Right. Lindsay?
I guess I'm just wondering if that does less for inclusion than more by alienating students with IEPs that have that. I don't know if there are any instances of students that would have that written into their IEP that are in a gen ed classroom that would then be somehow alienated because they are the one child getting food for good behavior. I just wouldn't want.
Yeah, but that would be
a counterproductive.
decided by the IEP team, which the parent is a part of. So I don't know, that team would be deciding it. That relates to that child, right?
Right.
So
that
that
they
might
can make
be,
the decision about whether or not it's worth
may feel that way, but it
the
doesn't,
isolation.
it's really that team of people that works with that child.
Any other questions?
I would just echo the thanks, Stephanie and the team, because, clearly we suggested, made some things, and, all those requests were followed through in a very thorough way and a very quick turnaround, so appreciate And it obviously speaks volumes to the level of commitment and intent that the council has about moving forward, and I think that says something as well.
Sorry, I actually do have one more question, Stephanie, for you, I think. But just, I definitely understand the need for a wellness policy, and I appreciate it. My concern with it is over how it's not necessarily going to be implemented, rolled out, but how it's going to be enforced. And I want to make sure that our parents aren't in a situation where they're food shamed or that kids are food shamed in any way, shape, or form once this policy rolls out. So can you help me?
I mean, per the policy, the way that it's written is the specifics of it is that it's the superintendent is ultimately responsible for the follow-through of the policy or designee, and so the superintendent would then designate who specifically would be responsible for following through on making sure that the policy is followed. However, I also know that within a building and a functioning, the way that buildings function, that very often, yes, I mean, people come through the front door, right? And there is that moment of, do you send the cupcakes home or not, right? And that's a reality. I do know from the feedback given in the surveys that of the administrators who took the survey, administrators were in favor of a policy that they could then reference to say, it's not you that I'm turning away, it's I'm following this policy. And teachers as well wrote that in their feedback in the survey as well, in that having a unified policy meant that it's not pointing out one child or one parent as the bad guy, but more relating it back to this is the policy and we need to follow it. And that's part of why that strong intent at the beginning of the year of really making sure that all of our teachers, all of our families, all of our administrators are on board and informed and ready to follow the policy. Sorry, I'm losing my words now. Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's right. And I think the collaboration with the council, with educators like Stephanie and Hillary and others who've been involved with our principals, I appreciate what you're saying, Lindsay, but this is not compliance cops at the front door. This is about sort of effectuating healthiness and wellness in our schools and then moving forward in a positive way. And the one school that shifted to no food, it took a while to shift to no food. And some of the, I'm sorry, we can't bring the cupcakes in, had to happen. And we can do that cordially and in an engaged process. And then also, maybe we would have in the principal's fridge the tangerines or the cuties that they can bring out and say, well, we can at least have this. So we can come up with strategies to help as we transition.
So I don't have opposition to this policy. I like the idea of the policy, and it certainly aligns in many ways with values that I have personally. It still comes across for me, this idea of us as an institution defining what wellness and healthiness is for folks comes off a little colonial. And I say that as I grew up in a household that was not terribly well-resourced, and many of the foods that were the only foods that could be afforded in order to feed us would not be considered healthy, but those were the foods that we ate, and they were good. They were worked for, and they were earned, and we enjoyed them. And there were many times as a child that I felt like my cultural values, my home values were not respected, that school was not a place for them, where my family structure was questioned. And so I wonder if this idea of saying foods with this much salt or foods with this much sugar are unhealthy foods and unacceptable foods for school, but those are the foods that are eaten at home, how does that get internalized as somehow my home values or my home traditions are less than? So that's one of the things I find challenging in talking about this. Is not that these are what I consider bad ideas. I just wonder how inclusive it feels for some folks, and if we are the entity to tell other people what is right or wrong for them to consume or feed their children. And I guess it's somewhat similar to this worry of food shaming. Yeah, so it makes me, I feel a little uncomfortable with some of the language and how that may be internalized by children and families.
I think we can work with, again, so some of the groups that were surveyed, and I appreciate, the Wellness Committee reaching out to the, AFHW, our Asociación de Familias Hispanas, our ABC group, and then working with those groups to ensure that that we provide spaces here in the district to be able to celebrate food, their culture, and which currently happens. I think I know at Dawes PTA, I know we have a couple of events that again really showcase, and we try to be very intentional about being very inclusive of everybody who's represented in our school community. So working at the local level, I think, and our principals and teachers, working with our parents to really, and I think that's part of that professional development, right? What does equity look like in the classroom? And then when you have conversations about, what families bring, what cultural values families bring to the table, I think this is an opportunity for teachers to reach out to parents and get to know all of the different cultures that make up and diversify and enrich our schools. At the same time, pushing for wellness, right, and making sure that. So I can see both, right, but a lot of times, again, I've had the same experience as well. Well, our food, for Latino family means a lot, and I used to host, bilingual advisory committee meetings, which are required by the state as a teacher. And that was central. And even some of the meetings that I have nowadays with our community around local issues, that is what draws us together. So again, I think it is an opportunity to try to really, again, this is policy which we can always revise and rethink and be more intentional about, making sure that teachers, parents, students are working together to really value, what everybody brings to that table.
I guess I'm struggling also because I just don't see why a no food policy wouldn't be better and more inclusive of our community for allergy, for religious, for socioeconomic, for cultural reasons.
I mean, I frankly agree with that, and I think I saw on the slide that is something that we can consider down the road. That's not what's being proposed to us right now. So I think what you're hearing is maybe some openness from the Wellness Council about what that might look like. But for now, I think we have the policy that's trying to at least move us in the right direction, recognizing that many of our schools do have food incentives, do have food celebrations. And so how can we start the process towards?
So the process would be making it a more well-centric community, but potentially ostracizing people who don't practice those wellness principles at home. So that doesn't seem like it's better for all.
Ostracize people at home at all. It's about what people do when they bring food to school, and again, I don't see this as food shaming, and I think I hear you loud and clear. So I think that's something that Stephanie, Hillary, and the council can actually really work on as we build a collaborative way to implement. I do want to say one more thing. I don't want to miss Anya's points. I think they're really poignant, and I know Stephanie as a colleague, and so I know the bubble over your head is that you're absorbing all that, and you're thinking about the next steps, and you're going to actually do a lot of work to think about the messages that we're sending, and I think that's actually really important to take, to hear out the food shaming conversation, the colonial conversation, and then thinking about how we honor and respect culture while we move towards wellness and food safety.
I also think this policy and the discipline policy before it, there's references in both of them to case law and to organizations that provide the best information the committees have had to work with in writing the policy. And I think, like many things in this district, in all districts, it comes down to the execution and how we handle our families. It could be shaming, right? It could be a negative experience for people on the receiving end of a policy execution, but it doesn't have to be.
Right.
And I think that comes down to how the educators handle it, how leadership and school teams manage the change process at their local site. And I think it's important for us to have policy that's, this one leverages the CDC and other organizations that have a bounty of information from which the recommendations come from. And I hope that the school teams in every site can roll it out in a way that is respectful and responsive and can also be flexible to whatever the communities need at the different school sites.
We've adopted, when presenting data, some language that alludes to the racist history of usage of data. And I wonder if something similar may be useful when talking about this wellness policy, acknowledging that controlling access to nutrition has been a lever in racist systems, controlling the economic means, but also just the legal access to and geographic access to things that are deemed as superior or nutritional has been a lever that has been exercised in white supremacy, and that this is not intended to be that same lever. Maybe something in the actual policy language that prompts folks to have, whether it's an internal or an external conversation about, well, how will I talk about this with people? Because, for some folks, maybe having really sugary muffins in the morning is called breakfast, right? And maybe that's called like the affordable and accessible and convenient breakfast that I can provide for my child. And now I want to share what I consider a nutritional and healthy option for my child with other children. And this policy is telling me that it's too sugary and it has no nutritional value, it doesn't represent wellness. How do we encourage that conversation with people in a way that is empathetic and loving? Like, I appreciate that you have put the work in and that you're making this loving gesture to share something that you've worked hard for with us. However, these are the other considerations and needs that we may have in terms of allergies or levels of sugar consumption, and that's not necessarily rejection of your effort or your hard work. And how do we include policy language that prompts people to think about how to have those conversations?
I think that also comes up in the procedures, not in the policy.
I was just going to say, I think I see a lot of that in the flyers
That's
to
exactly
parents,
what I was gonna
the
say.
information to teachers.
The admin
and-
procedures aren't.
I agree with
aren't
that, but
here.
if it's not in the policy, how can you value it for the procedures, right? You have to have a certain overarching value in order for your procedures to look a certain way. So what I'm suggesting is there language that is in the policy that will then infuse that value in procedures, which we have had in other policy.
So, oh, go ahead,
No,
Stephanie.
What I was going to say was that, basically I was going to say what you guys had just said, was that I really think it is very important what you're saying, and I really think that it needs to be included in all of that information that goes to parents, teachers, administrators as we start the school year, absolutely. And I will certainly work with the council to ensure that were to happen, pending an approval of this policy. I don't know specifically about where it would fit in the actual policy.
I mean, I think, in terms of, it starts off with the goals for addressing nutrition education and nutrition promotion include the following, and then there's the list of 5 things. So I think that's where it would go. I know that we need to adopt this in order to move forward with all of the other great suggestions you put forth. So what I would recommend is that we vote on this and move forward. But then, as you are creating all of the documentation, the implementation documentation, to be thinking about that feedback and then to come back with an amendment. And like I said, I would recommend that it be up front there of some language to capture
And we
these
will
ideas.
absolutely work with Stephanie and colleagues on this, and we can share what Anya referenced in terms of what we do with our data reports as an example to be able to both think about for the policy if we have to amend it, and then in the administrative procedures. And I'll work with you.
Thank you.
So can we go ahead and do the vote then?
Mendoza?
Yes.
Milburn?
Yes.
Hernandez?
Yes.
Chow?
Yes.
Tanya Vudi?
Yes.
Cohen? Yes. Carta?
Yes.
Can I just make one more comment, just because we were celebrating collaboration earlier, and I just want to, again, underscore Stephanie and Hillary's incredible work with the council. Stephanie pulled this, and Hillary pulled this together while they were closing out a school year. And so I think we had, the policy meeting was in April. And rich, fantastic, it was in May, so that's even, I'll make my point even stronger, thank you very much. In May, and so as excellent teachers, educators who are working towards getting to the finish line to do the type of work and to have the commitment says a lot about the collaborative spirit. And so we will absolutely work together to fine tune this to even make it more responsive to the needs of the board and the community. Thank you, but thank you.
Thank you. All right, we will move on to our first discussion item then, the special education overview.
So, I don't know which one this is. So first of all, before I move forward with this, typically, Cabinet does not respond when there's comments from the audience, but for each of you who spoke tonight, I would like to meet with all of you in the next couple of weeks and see what we can do to rectify the situations. These were unfortunate staffing issues that happened in your sites, but I'd like to contact each of you. So thank you. Moving on, I'm going to give a little overview of special education, and I really appreciate the board asking for this. In my time doing this is, I think, the second time we've been asked to highlight special ed, so I feel like this is a really important opportunity for us. And there's a number of special educators, all of those people in the back here work for special ed. They're here. Just a fraction of our crowd. They would each like to come up and give about a minute or two of what they do. And I think this is really an important piece to hear the breadth of the work that goes on within the district for everybody to be aware of. So however you guys want to, how do you want to come up? Probably in different groups. Did you guys figure this out?
Joy? Joyce,
So I have psychology,
will you move the Kleenex box?
I'm sorry,
Move the Kleenex box,
move the Kleenex box.
unless you need it.
So why don't you all come up in your groupings and introduce yourselves and what you do so that the board and the other people in the audience have an idea of who you are. Introduce what you do, and then talk. Okay, so you guys start.
Okay, great. Hello, everyone.
Just please make sure you speak into the microphone, whichever one is working. I'm not sure which one.
All right, I gotta make sure the speech is up. All right, I'll start. I'm Adrian Gankarzik, school psychologist at Willard and Lincolnwood. I'm Nicole Smith. I'm a school psychologist at Kingsley and Rice Education Center. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to the board, and thank you, Joyce, for your leadership. School psychologists are a small group of highly trained professionals that are integral to the operation of each District 65 school. We help children and youth succeed academically, socially, behaviorally, and emotionally. By collaborating with teachers, administrators, staff, and parents, school psychologists help cultivate and foster safe and supportive learning environments. We are the district's designated diagnosticians. We administer and interpret psychological tests and explore district data as components of case study evaluations. On a daily basis, we utilize our unique expertise to conduct psychological evaluations that ensure that students with disabilities are educated in the most appropriate setting. We identify students' strengths and challenges and consult with teachers and administrators regarding individual students, classroom management, and placement options. Our work with special education evaluations aims to contribute to gains, thank you, in student achievement while keeping in mind issues of equity and fairness. Often we are the building level experts on special education, from autism assessment and special education law to instructional strategies to help our diverse learners. In addition to all that, we are the leading members of our multi-tiered systems of support teams and problem-solving teams. And we work on development, implementation, and evaluation of targeted and individualized academic and behavior intervention plans. Our colleagues look to us as problem solvers and vital team members who can interpret student data and guide educational decisions. As leading members of all tiers of our positive behavior intervention system teams, we support students' social, emotional, and behavioral health. We participate in the creation of positive classroom environments, and we tailor emotional support to meet individual goals of students. Through whole class, small group, and individualized intervention, we address the development of social and emotional skills, executive functioning skills, and engage in restorative practices with individuals and groups of children. We also serve as 504 plan building coordinators, and we guide the school's efforts to comply with federal 504 Section 504 regulations. We include training for school staff, guiding referral and evaluation processes, and establish and plan for the coordination of services.
We are mental health experts, as we offer expertise regarding various mental health related issues and psychiatric disorders that may impact the learning environment. We conduct risk assessments, provide individual and group counseling, coordinate services with outside providers. Lost my space. We are trained to respond to school crises, conduct suicide assessments, and implement trauma-informed practices and help students focus on learning. We work with parents in so many capacities as a resource for developmental questions, as experts in district procedures for assessments, as partners in cultivating the best learning environment for their children, and as advocates for their children's success. We help students and their families address barriers to learning, which improves achievement and reduces demands placed on administrators and teachers.
District 65 psychologists are committed to advancing the school board goals of high-quality teaching and learning, family and community engagement, and safe, supportive school climate, all through an equity lens. We are a uniquely qualified group of 13 professionals who are devoted to the academic, personal, and social success of every student, whatever it takes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Roach. I work at Oakton. I am the 3rd grade through 5th grade bilingual, self-contained special education classroom. My classroom was opened about 4 years ago. I came the second year that it was open. And I have been diligently working with students who vary from needs that are language-based, learning disabilities, math learning disabilities, up until like more intensive cognitive delays. There are students who have language struggles, and so I not only work with English as their language, but also Spanish, because that is the home language, and that language is the important language to get them learning and interested in learning and into literacy and understanding concepts. I meet with teachers weekly to talk about both my students, how they perform if they have minutes in their classrooms, as well as the students that I do not teach. I help the psychologists and the general ed teachers develop MTSS plans, which is that multi-tiered student support system, and I make sure that everyone is fully vetted before they're given an IEP. In particular, in my classroom, I hold celebrations for my students after we do the required touching on the general ed classroom curriculum. I have my students celebrate their learning, their reading and writing, and we have parents, teachers, everyone come at about 7 o'clock in the morning, and we read our writing, both in English and a different one in Spanish. We make sure that those students are proud of their work, and I have seen 90 to 100% of my students grow, both in math and reading, and also writing, both on NWEA as well as MAP, as well as any of the district assessments with their accommodations. I also have seen them grow social, emotionally. The general ed teachers and I work hard to make them a part of the classroom by giving them a place, and you can tell because they have this place where they can feel comfortable academically, they feel much stronger when they are with their general education peers. I have also graduated students from my classroom who have had severe language learning disabilities and who are now able to be in the classroom with some support because they've managed to deal with their language challenges and can now function more successfully without the extreme support that they get in my classroom. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm a rule follower, so this types out to under 3 minutes. Thank you for allowing me to try to encapsulate the work that I do in District 65 Special Services. My name is Julie Yondell. I am a paraprofessional and have been supporting learners at Dawes for about 15 years now, and I've worked in full inclusion, in cross-category, in low incidence. I've worked at all elementary grades, and I've even worked some summers at Park School with much older learners. So the brevity required by our meeting this evening will not do my experience justice, even with the most parsimonious word choices. I have stories to tell. I have epic sagas of triumph over adversity, inspiring stories of teamwork and camaraderie, and I have capers. All of that just while teaching math. So, since I cannot take the time now to tell you a story, please know that the complex characters in these tales are children with special needs. They have cognitive, behavioral, emotional, and physical disabilities that significantly impact the way their story unfolds in school. And it is my job to lead them through each plot point. The only way for me to teach them properly is to create a relationship with them. Frankly, if my students do not experience me as trustworthy and kind, they're not going to listen to me. I start by noticing. I read their faces. I listen to their voices, and I hear their behavior. So this helps me to anticipate what might get in the way of their success, to remove the barriers that inhibit their effort. If I understand each individual student, then I can judge when it's possible to step back and foster independence. I can also gauge when to step back in order to scaffold to the next step. This takes constant vigilance and adjustment. In some cases, it helps not only to have an agile brain, being light on my feet helps too. The paraprofessional is the human tool that brings the planning of the IEPs, the 504s, the BIPs into the classroom, onto the playground, through the lunch line, and into the gym, and through the hallways. We help children gain access to all subject areas, including all the fine arts specials. We adapt curriculum on the fly, and we also ensure that accommodations are available. This work is so much more than behavior management. Every moment is an opportunity to teach. So, if any of you would like to know what this looks like on the ground level, come on over. I'll tell you a story.
Okay, good evening, and thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I really appreciate it. I have some words about what my colleagues do, but I think I'll just focus on what I do in the classroom. A few years ago, Dr. Tricia Baker, who is a former Haven teacher, who now teaches at King Arts, dreamed up the concept of Inspirational Thursdays. This concept was to bring in speakers from the Evanston community to tell their stories and inspire the students to see life through a different perspective. The speaker would tell his, her, or their story, then we would have a Q&A and time for journaling. I have carried on this tradition by having speakers come visit, policemen and women, NU basketball players, Peace Corps volunteers, and former students and their parents. I teach low-incidence students along with instructional LLA class at Haven with Carl Rogers as my aide. Creating opportunities for my students to work together in academic and social settings has had a positive effect on all of us. I believe that getting out into the community with my students has built stronger relationships in my classroom. We have hopped on public transportation, Metra, City Bus, or L, and have traveled to downtown Evanston, downtown Chicago, the DuSable Museum, Garfield Park Conservatory, Millennium Park, and many other places. Around the holidays, we raised funds and walked to TJ Maxx so we could buy socks, hats, and gloves for the homeless. We went on a trip to YOU and the Gibbs Morrison Center so my 8th graders would know what options are available for them next year as they head over to ETHS. One of my students is going to be with YOU this summer, and this is going to change his course through while he's at ETHS. We have cooked meals together using teamwork to clean and organize our classroom. We made lasagna, salad, and served it to the students' favorite teachers. We made smoothies, breakfast sandwiches, waffles, and paninis, and even fried turkeys. Shh, don't tell the health and wellness. We listened to the podcast 16 Shots, the shooting of Laquan McDonald, and discussed Chicago politics and our legal system. We read Seed Folks and Refugee. We researched and wrote essays about people who made a difference in the civil rights movements. A few of my students have not ever had the opportunity to learn to swim. I am the program director for Girls Play Sports, and I just pick up my students, and we go to the swimming and water polo session of Girls Play Sports so they have that opportunity. I visit families at home. I stay in touch with former students. I bake and drop off cookies at their houses. I love them so much. I know that I have a responsibility to challenge my students in and out of the classroom and take this responsibility seriously. I know that building relationships with my students takes time, and I know that I must build a strong foundation first, taking time to build trust and getting to know my students as individuals. I try to make my classroom a safe space for academic and social learning, and I challenge them to do more every day. Special educators in District 65 are coaching students in the game of life. We encourage, we challenge, we create, and we are preparing our students to navigate a challenging world through a wide range of activities and lessons. Thank you very much for letting me speak.
I'm Michelle Brand, and I'm one of the special education supervisors here in District 65.
Hi, and I'm John Sigler. I'm another special ed supervisor in District 65.
Hi, I'm Dr. Emily Chambers. I'm one of the special ed supervisors as well.
Good evening, I'm Sarah Novi, another special education supervisor.
Mike Edwards, also a special services supervisor.
On behalf of the Special Education Department, several of us would like to share with you our perspectives regarding the work of all the professionals who work with us on a daily basis. This team is comprised of dedicated and hard-working professionals who care deeply about students and families in our community and remain the core of what is best about District 65. The team includes special education supervisors, coordinators, principals, teachers, teaching assistants, health clerks, nurses, psychologists, social workers, speech-language pathologists, occupational therapists, physical therapists, vision specialists, district-wide deaf and hard of hearing teacher, adaptive PE teacher, assistive technology coordinator, hearing and vision screening technicians, and instructional and restorative coaches. But in reality, the team also includes the entire district community because these students belong to all of us.
At the head of this team is Assistant Superintendent Joyce Bartz, who has inspired and led the district to accomplish many goals to best meet the needs of our most vulnerable students. Joyce Bartz's leadership has helped lead the way in revising how we teach social emotional learning and handle discipline and truancy intervention. Special services initiatives include school climate, social emotional equity learning, or SEAL, sharing circles, alternative to suspension, and restorative practices. These initiatives have benefited all students in District 65, not just students with disabilities. Our department has also played a major role in other district initiatives, including multi-tiered systems of supports, or MTSS, and promoting racial and educational equity for all students. Joyce Bartz has advocated for the voices of special services to be heard in principal meetings, curriculum meetings, and other various committees in the district. Day to day, our Special Services Department works tirelessly to provide individualized instruction to our students and to guide families through the complexities of the special education process. This includes supporting families while they navigate the evaluation process to determine whether or not their child has a disability. If found eligible, an individual education plan or program is developed, implemented, and continually assessed. We also support families through life transitions, such as preschool to kindergarten, elementary to middle school to high school, and even long-term adult planning. We support students at school during crises and support their families during and afterward. We connect families to community support systems. We listen as students tell us their needs and dreams, and we partner with all families of students with disabilities to seek the best for each child. We work together to be creative, resourceful, and effective advocates for all children in District 65, and we invite the board to visit our classrooms, offices, and schools to see us in action.
Good evening. My name is Mary Larson. I'm the Coordinator of Health Services for the district, and our Health Services Department is under the Special Services umbrella. Assistant Superintendent Joyce Bartz has been integral in giving our department the support we need to do our job as efficiently and efficaciously as possible. The following is a snapshot of what we do in health services. And if I gave you it ahead of time, you would think I'm reading the whole thing, because I'm not going to, but I will give you my statement when I'm done. So responsibilities include ensuring compliance of all state, board, and district policies, establishing, maintaining, and updating health requirements, working with our student record system to get the requirements correctly programmed into our into the program so that we can run the reports we need for the state. My staff is integral in scanning, uploading, following up on vision and hearing screenings, the needed dental exams, eye exams, immunizations. We have a wonderful secretary. We have 2 full-time vision and hearing screening technicians. We just got the second one this year, thanks to Joyce. 14 health clerks. I have 3 Gen Ed RNs, again, thanks to Joyce, at Lincoln, Oakton, and Dawes. We have a new classroom RN position at Park. Health clerks and RNs working in our schools are generally referred to as HOP, so if you see that, that's what it means, health office personnel. They carry out their many clerical duties while still providing excellent first aid. In regard to what I do, one of my biggest jobs is establishing relationships in the community. I'm on the Evanston Department of Health and Human Services Community Advisory Board, the North Shore University Health System Evanston Hospital Community Advisory Board, Presence Health Community Leadership Board, and the ETHS Health Center. I maintain good working relationships with Skokie Health Department, Evanston Health Department. I've created community partnerships with the local dentist, Dr. Frank Carcazes. 12 of our schools had in-school dental services that received dental cleanings, dental exams, fluoride treatments, and sealants for free if there was no insurance. It was offered to everyone in the school. Joyce and I are presently working on a partnership with Trilogy to bring behavioral health services into our school. We have the Ronald McDonald Caremobile. It was a couple of times here at JH. It's Nichols, Dewey, Rhodes, Lincoln, and that's all with my staff coordinating it and getting the students what they need for health requirements. Just so you know, 218 students out of the 12 schools were found to have 1 or more untreated caries. 18 students were found to have active signs of infection that needed urgent attention. These students who need follow-up can go to Preferred Dental to get that treatment. I am on various district committees, work with with all of the intervention teams, do daily care for diabetics, computing insulin dosages. I follow up on all the failed hearing screening. I manage the 37 AEDs in our buildings, and I email staff health reminders. So thank you, Joyce, for being a forward thinker and using compassionate logic to support health services and all of the special education department. Thank you very much.
That's a tough act to follow. My name is John Mitchell, and I'm the coordinator and principal at Rice Education Center, which is a therapeutic day school here in District 65. Many of the students that I serve or that attend Rice Education Center are wards of the state and are separated from their biological families or foster families and live in a residential treatment center. These students suffer multiple traumas, including physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. Our students are regularly in and out of psychiatric hospitalizations due to self-injurious behaviors, suicidal, and even homicidal ideation. It's not uncommon for our students to elope from the school when they become dysregulated, sometimes finding themselves in the middle of Ridge Avenue. And true story, I have actually pulled a child off of a car in the middle of Ridge. We provide ongoing social emotional support to our students. Our teachings extend beyond reading and math. We address their social and emotional needs to ensure they are available for learning. We have grown and expanded our service over the years thanks to Joyce Bartz, and Rice now has a full-time social worker and a full-time behavior interventionist in order to meet the diverse needs of our students. Additionally, we provide consulting services to other schools within the district who are experiencing challenging behaviors and want alternative suggestions on how to address these behaviors. Over the years, because of Joyce Bartz, Rice has become known within the district. People realize what we do and the students we serve. And Joyce, thank you for all of your leadership. And I extend an invitation to any of you to come and visit Rice. It's never dull. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Hi, I'm Morgan Hinton. I am the Vision Itinerant teacher for the district. Joyce Bartz, your support has meant everything to me this year, so thank you. Upon reflection, my role in the district, I provide vision services to those students who meet the eligibility criteria, ages 3 to 22. I am mainly at Park School, Orrington, JEH, King Arts, and Oakton to provide direct vision services. Direct meaning that I can do pre-Braille skills, Braille readiness skills, assistive technology, so magnification devices. At Park School, we accommodate and modify for our students using eye gaze devices, tactile symbols, schedules, those types of things. So I do a lot of modifications for my students in order to meet their unique vision needs, and they are very unique here in this district. I complete functional vision assessments in order to determine eligibility. I work with the IEP team for my students. I work with the 504 plans that some students have here in this district. And I email and observe daily. So that's a big part of my role. One person that I would like to bring to your attention is Carol Otten. That is our orientation and mobility specialist here in the district, meaning that Carol provides services to those students aged 3 to 22 for cane techniques and safe travel, both within their educational environment and also out in the community. I have attended several professional developments over the year, and I'm proud to say, especially for our students at Park, I attended the Have Dreams, and would highly recommend for the board to go and check that out. If you have not, it is exceptional what they are doing there. Reflecting on my students and wanting to celebrate them, an example is I have a student who uses a very high-tech magnification device, and now he can independently access his materials both at a near and a distance, and send that edited image to his teachers and peers, so accessing that. I have another student who has just started learning Braille this year. He is able to Braille 7 letters, and also is able to actually read 3 letters, which is not easy. My students at Park School, like I said, are using eye gaze and their devices and tactile objects in order to communicate. And I know Jill and our team are going to speak more to that, about the communication that we have done this past year. And lastly, the most important thing that I think that I can do for my students with visual impairments is self-advocacy and creating independent young adults who are ready for whatever the next transition in their lives are, and just being someone where they can come to when they need help, when they have questions, because understanding vision is hard enough, and understanding vision loss is even harder. So thank you all for this opportunity. As those previously suggested, I would love for anyone to come and shadow me a day in the life, because I am itinerant, so I go to several buildings within a day and within a week. So thank you very much.
I'm Jill Anderson, the principal at Park School. I'm here with some of my team. And we do have we're visual learners, so we do have something for you to focus on as we speak. All right. Oh, it works great. So I want to just share with you Park School. Park School services students who are ages 3 through the day before they turn 22, which is fairly unique considering we're an elementary school district here. We have a partnership with the high school district 202, and so there's a collaboration where we serve students from both school districts, in addition to students that are out of these district boundaries that are tuitioned into our program. All of our students have special needs. We are a self-contained public school. So in the continuum of special ed services, that's where we sit. Our students are identified as Park School being their recommended placement because they have some really significant needs. They may have significant cognitive impairments, multiple disabilities, or autism, and they really require an environment that can be supportive of those needs, that can provide the necessary accommodations, and so that is who Park School serves. What do our students learn? They learn the same things that all students learn. We focus on truly adapting our educational curriculum. So our students are getting access to the same content. It's just adapted in an ability to make it easier for them to understand, usually using lots of sensories and objects and experiential learning. They focus on life skills, so they're learning the skills that might come very naturally to us and to their neurotypical peers. They are learning vocational skills. So even at a very, very early age, we like to think about how can this skill translate into something that is going to be very useful and contributing to their society when they're adults. And as Morgan alluded to, we focus on communication, because when you're not able to be understood, life can be really frustrating, and it's really important that we provide our students with those skills to be able to communicate their wants and needs. And then focusing on independence, as Morgan also alluded to, self-advocacy. Our students, there's a lot of adults and a lot of supports in their life, so anything that we can do to help them be more independent and feel proud of what they can do is really key. So I'm going to pass this on to Christy Hammond, one of our special education teachers. We're going to share with you 3 things, only 3 short things that we do to really focus on strategies and interventions for our students. Do you want to click or do you want me to?
I can click. Thank you. Hello. So what I'm going to talk about is the verbal behavior approach. Verbal behavior falls under applied behavior analysis, or as many people know it as ABA. Park School staff over the last 2 years have been trained under the guidance of Dr. Maria Winga, District 65 consultant. And verbal behavior is a way to teach communication, receptive and expressive, using reinforcement as well as modeling, and then kind of fading both of those things so the student can develop the independence for their communication. So what we're going to do here is we're going to watch a video. Actually, I don't know if I know how to play it. Okay, of a student. This is Jennifer Flaxman, and she is doing a verbal behavior session with a student who has mastered working on prepositions, and the student has mastered the word in, and he is now working on the word under, and he is deaf, so you will see that they're going to be signing. Oh. Thank you.
Sorry.
I don't think the video's there. We don't have access to the video.
Oh, okay. So in the video, what you would have seen is Jennifer working with the student and working on the word under. So they would have gone through a series talking about there's a monkey with a bridge and saying, where's the monkey? The student was supposed to reply under the bridge, but the student made the mistake and used the word in the bridge. So then the teacher models it and says, where is Where's the car? Where's the car? And then she models under the bridge, asks the student again, where's the car? The student correctly said under the bridge. Then she uses what we call a distractor. So she had him do motor imitation, this, and then once again said, where's the car? And the student successfully said, under the bridge. So that's a really quick example of verbal behavior approach that we use with the students that it makes sense and that is a beneficial instructional tool for them. I'm going to hand it over to Lauren.
All right. Okay, so I will talk a little bit about technology and the way that we use that in our building. So in this video, which is not a video, you will see. So some of our students who are not able to access their learning environment verbally use different technologies, and in this image, they're using a Big Mac switch, and so her hand is resting on that big red button. And these buttons are sort of our gateway to higher level technology that will allow them to communicate their wants and needs is the big goal. But we first have to sort of teach them that accessing this is worthwhile, and communicating wants and needs is really hard. And so we first find things that they really enjoy. So in this example, she would hit the button, and then in that sort of cylinder, all these balls come popping up and everything, and it's really exciting. And that's a really instant gratification. When I hit this, something I like happens. And then this led her to be able to start learning a more complex way to use that same button. And so on that iPad, it's verbally scanning these different choices. And then when it gets to something she likes, she uses that button to then make a request. And so we look at ways to start and sort of get their buy-in into like, this is gonna be worth your effort, and building it up to higher level skills.
Apologies, in the Google Slides to PowerPoint, the videos became images. Not a problem. So this year we've really been focusing on communication skills as a school-wide focus. We saw a need. We used some school-wide assessments. One's called the VB MAP, the Verbal Behavior Milestones. Help me out, friends. It's continue on. It's a tool that really addresses and measures the skills that Christy was talking about. And also the communication matrix, which really measured the second group of students to see what sort of pre-intentional kinds of communicative behaviors our students have. So we really looked at our data, and we identified that there was a school-wide need in the area of requesting. When I spoke about some challenging behaviors and frustrations we might see, if there's something that you want but you don't have a way to communicate what you want, that can be frustrating. So we looked at some different plans. We put together some core vocabulary that gives students the tools to be able to communicate something in lots of different ways. The word go can mean lots of different things. I want to go, I want you to go. We looked at creating some more opportunities for communication, and then modeling. Modeling means if we're asking a student to use a communication device, we should be communicating with them in that same system. Just for example, I wouldn't expect a student to speak with me in Spanish if I was only speaking with them in English. So we have to teach them how to use their communication device by using the same system. So we took some data, and this is very short period of time, from February to May, using these assessment tools, we saw growth. We saw 6% growth in that VB MAP, and a 3% growth in the communication matrix. So that was really exciting to us to see that by really targeting this one specific skill, we were in even only 3 months, we were able to see some growth. And then this would be a video of a student who was in his classroom. They have some swings that are set up. And prior to this work, the student would go to the swing by himself, and he would really struggle to get onto it, and he would get frustrated. The teacher put a system in place where there were some images on the wall of specific swings, and then with modeling and frequent reinforcement, within a few months, and the video would have shown that he walks up to the image, grabs a picture symbol that indicates which swing he wants to use, finds a communication partner on the other side of the room, hands her the picture, and she says, "Oh, you need help." And they walk to the swing together, and she can assist him in climbing in. So in just a few months, that was some really amazing growth that we saw. I just want to thank you. Park students are phenomenal. Park staff are phenomenal. Again, you're always welcome to join us. And I really want to just take this minute to thank Joyce for always supporting Park School and being on our committees and supporting us and supporting me personally throughout this year. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Clarissa Lai. I'm one of the school social workers at Nichols. I will keep this very brief because I was determined not to speak. This is like past my bedtime, but I just wanted to, talk about the social work department as well as what Joyce has done. She's built a really strong social work department. I think that we see in a lot of the schools, and we are often, the first responders to a lot of various crises that happen in the school, in the community. And I think I value comparing, the social work roles in our district versus others, that we do have a lot of responsibilities as far as supporting not only our special education students, but also our general education. We are often the first ones to kind of support those who are kind of on the border dealing with anxiety and depression, and then making sure that they get the support that they need. So I do just want to say, Joyce, thank you so much for that, because you have built a very strong department that we've been able to kind of respond, especially as our needs continue to grow in the community, and that I hope that, even with our new supervisor and everything, that will still be something that's valued. So that's all. Thank you.
Thanks for letting me talk last. I appreciate it. So I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. I will try to keep my remarks brief and heartfelt and focus on my experience. And if you don't know, I'm Arlene Grossman, and I had the esteemed honor and great pleasure of being the principal of Park School for 12 years until my retirement last year. And of course, being part of District 65, there's no way you can go cold turkey. So Joyce very graciously offered me the opportunity to continue with the district part-time as your placement coordinator. Through that job, what I do is I'm, in a sense, the case manager for our students who need to sometimes go out of our district and find other schools that can meet their needs. Some of the students that I serve come from very hard experiences with a lot of trauma and need a special therapeutic environment outside of what we can perform in this district. But I try very hard, as I know everybody does, to make sure that if we can serve them in the district as they move on and they improve, that we try to bring them back to the district, whether it be part-time or full-time. And that's part of my job also. It's been a great honor to be able to look at students from another lens besides at Park, and to get to know parents and let them know that we still care and we want them to be part of the district, and we want them to know that we're here to support them in whatever way we can. And that's part of my job for this year. I hope you give me just a second to say a few other things that through the years that I've been here, I've said to my staff and also to Joyce, and just wanted to reiterate very quickly. And through my tenure, I've been asked numerous times, was always asked to explain why our scores and state standardized data don't show sometimes the student growth and the outcomes. And I would like to ask you all to take a moment to really think about what is truly important about the educational programming we provide in this district at Park and all of our other SPED programs. I would like you to take a moment to switch from these standardized data points to think about the qualitative data that I witnessed every day in this district when I worked with special special education. When a student is in the midst of any type of educational testing or programming, has a seizure or an anxious moment and can't cope with the world around them, what is important is not always the score, but the skill and care your special educators use to bring those children back to a place where they can once again access their school environment and curriculum. The qualitative data we should be reviewing and hopefully review is how each special educator starts each day anew, striving to provide innovative tools and techniques, no matter how difficult the task. You then might ask, how can special education ever measure our outcomes? And I would respectfully say to you that what could ever fully measure the importance of treating students who cannot speak for themselves or always show us what they know, an education that may look different than our gen ed classrooms, but still provides the same quality programming all students deserve. I hope you can take a moment and celebrate with me what this district's true outcomes in special education have and continue to be, that each child in District 65 is treated with dignity and respect, and each special education educator is committed every day to finding a way to reach these very special and unique individuals. You should all be proud to be a part of District 65. Thank you.
Yikes. Okay, thanks, everybody. Thank you. I mean, obviously a really passionate group. So I just want to, is there a way I can see it up there? There we go. Thank you. So thank you for this opportunity to talk a little bit about special ed, which is very dear to my heart. And I have to figure out how to do this thing. So tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about special education and give you an overview on it, some of the progress that we've made, and looking forward. So IDEA, well, it all began with IDEA, not really, because the law that came into place in the beginning was the Education for All Handicapped Children Act that occurred in 1975, and that was in existence from then till 1990. So I started as a social worker, though, in the district in 1979 at Nichols School. So this was just 4 years after we began to have legislation to serve the needs of special education students. Really, before these laws came into play, there were millions of students with disabilities in the United States who did not get the service that they required. Students who were blind, deaf, had some kind of intellectual impairment, were frequently institutionalized. So this was major legislation that this occurred, and really has not been that long that it's been in play. IDEA, or the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, the purpose of this act coming forward was really to ensure that students have available, free and public education and related services in order to address their unique needs. There are 6 pillars of IDEA when we think about what are the important parts of this act. One is FAPE, free and appropriate public education. One is appropriate evaluations. Next is an individualized educational plan, least restrictive environment, parent participation, and procedural safeguards that are shared with families that ensure the rights of students. So my backdrop on this is to think about how many special education students we have in the district today. So we have about 1,146. This is always a floating number because we have students who may become eligible in the next few days. And similarly, about the beginning of July, our numbers, we change because we will be having about 100 students or so we average on that go to the high school at that point in time. So our special ed roles change at that point. We have 16 or 17 instructional classes at this point in time. This does not include Park and Rice classes, and we have about 50 students who are outplaced. So what's FAPE? FAPE is a free and appropriate public education, and this is one of the areas when we're thinking about IEPs and developing them and really thinking about how we are able to meet children's needs that at times can be one of the more litigated areas in the arena of special education. The group of people that have talked earlier, all the different special educators that we have, are people that will be involved in making decisions regarding IEP meetings and services for students. But a free and appropriate public education may at times be a frustrating feeling for some of our families because they may want more minutes for services, or they may want additional services or a more restrictive setting for their child that the IEP team may not be in agreement with. Here's the amount of special ed staff that we have in the district today. It gives you an idea of how many people we have working in the department. The miscellaneous staff include our restorative facilitators, BBIS. And this is the budget that we have currently, $28 million, and it's 22% of the total District 65 budget. So, least restrictive environment, another one of the pillars that we are talking about in terms of IDEA. So in determining an IEP, all of these staff that we just saw, many of them with years of experience, are determining how much time, how many minutes, what level of service might be allocated for a student. And so two of the things that they are weighing at in terms of their IEP meetings is FAPE, free and appropriate public education, as well as serving students in a least restrictive environment. So here you can see the percentage of students that receive special education and what percent get them, like how much of the day that they receive that. So 66% of the students receive special ed less than 40% of their school day. So those are students who might be in an inclusive setting in the district. 9% of the students receive special ed 40 to 80% of their school day, and 25% receive it more than 80% of their school day. That 25% is bigger than what you might normally see, but we also have Park and Rice within our community, and that accounts for some of that, as well as our self-contained classrooms and outplaced students. Case study evaluation. So I think our psychologist and social worker spoke a little bit earlier. When we are providing interventions for a child through a multi-tiered system of support, we are looking at how that child is doing to meet those interventions and to progress. At times, that student is not doing as well when we're progress monitoring and looking at how the child is functioning, and so we may have some question and wonder if a child needs services through an IEP. So at that point in time, we will go through a case study evaluation, and the case study may include a psychological, social history, speech evaluation, OTPT, adaptive PE. It could be a variety of different things based on the needs and the concerns that we have about the student. So in the district today, these are the amount of students that we have with those disabilities. And I'd say this is the same percentage, pretty much the same lineup that we had when I started 8 years ago. So after we've done the case study, we come to another one of the pillars of IDEA, and that's the IEP, the Individualized Education Plan. This is a legal document that will provide students services to address their needs. It has a series of goals, services, minutes of service provided, and really the educational placement of the child within the school, or the programming that is determined in that meeting. At the meeting, parent participation is required, and that too is one of the parts of IDEA. So 504 plans, what are those? We have 481 students that have plans in the district at this time. This is really a general education plan in that those accommodations that are provided to the student generally happens within the general education setting. Students that have 504 plans do not have a disability that qualifies them for an IEP. This is also a civil rights law that came about through the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. Students who get 504 plans might have accommodations, and they may at times have a limited related service like speech, where a student, for instance, who is dyslexic could get text-to-speech technology to assist them with their learning. And because we're in the summer, I had decided to include ESY. ESY is extended school year. This is special ed summer school. Not all students receive this. This is really based on something called regression and recoupment, in terms of how much a student regresses and the time it will take for that child to recoup their learning during the school year will be the determination that special educators make as to whether a child qualifies for ESY. So today, starting in the district, we have 156 kids. These are rising first graders. Our kids that had just graduated that were in 8th grade received their summer school at the high school at this point. We have 68 kids from Park, 30 at Rice, and 43 of our JEH kids. So Jill and John told you a little bit about Park and Rice earlier, so I'm going to skip over that. I'll tell you about some of our improvements that we made. So an important aspect that needed to be addressed was our continuum between inclusion and self-contained classrooms, so that we were making sure that we were providing the right level of services for our students. So that is something that I began to work on pretty early when I came on board. We've increased our staffing to address our students' IEPs. I worked with our special education supervisors in terms of training, the law, services, etc. We improved our IEP development and compliance. Our Medicaid reimbursements are today at the highest level they've been. We've improved the integration of SPED into school leadership, into SIT teams, and into school climate teams. We've increased communication with parents, not always what we want. We've increased our enrollments at Park. There was a Park School Long-Range Plan that I led a few years ago, and that was really to increase the capacity to service children who had more intensive needs on the autism spectrum. And we increased our capacity in programming at Rice. Highest level of collaboration with the curriculum department to date. I really credit Stacy Beardsley for her work in that window that we have been able to be involved with in terms of the curriculum department and special ed. Developed a lot of relationships with community agencies, improved training for our staff in Wilson, improved the management and quality of outside placements, improved conditions for our paraprofessionals who are very dear to my heart, moved discussions about special ed into district and local school planning, increasing the understanding that instruction of students with special needs is the responsibility of all staff who are in the building. Strengthened our relationship with District 202 Special Ed Department, and developed cordial relationships with my community SPED advocates. Thank you, Karen. And social work services increased by 25% the number of social workers during this time The goal was really to better position us to address increases in autism, trauma-influenced mental health concerns, homelessness, dysregulation, and self-injurious behaviors. And as we see that there are other school districts that are striking and asking for additional social workers, that was something that we knew that we really needed to increase our social work services to work with our students who have additional needs. During this time period, you know, it wasn't just special education, it was also special services. We established the truancy program and the student engagement facilitator with a grant that we got through ISBE, established the CEL initiatives, established school climate teams at every school. We developed the Whole Child Council, which we later evolved or morphed it into DELT, established a mental health crisis team to address when we have a serious issue that happens within a school that we want to make sure that there's a team of us that goes out to help with. Develop restorative practices, alternatives to suspension, updates to the policy, PBIS implementation, established SEAL and Advisory 2.0, developed these policies, gender, worked with on wellness, suicide, restraint, seclusion, updates to many policies to student mental health and special services. Initially, response to intervention, or MTSS, started in the special ed department, then it went to curriculum, then it went back to special ed, then it went back to curriculum where it needs to be. Thank you. We initiated the Early Childhood Task Force and developed the Head Start grant that was also about 5 years ago, where CETA had pulled out of orchestrating the Head Start grant, and we took over writing the grant and brought in $15 million so that we could improve our Head Start work in the district. We improved our immunization compliance and health support, hired registered nurses, and we had this great iPad initiative that we began about 8 years ago, where we began with our special ed students and giving them iPads to see if we could improve their work with devices. These are the community agency and partnerships that we have in the Special Services Department. And what's next? What I really wanted to do was to help develop a roadmap for the next director. So I really want focus to be on improving special education instruction and services. That's absolutely #1 priority. Focused look at that. Would like special education supervisors to be more closely tied to their schools, to individual schools, and to have a greater hand in supporting special needs students within those schools. Greater emphasis on improving instruction, inclusion in self-contained settings, even greater collaboration with the Department of Curriculum on professional development, more work with principals on supporting high-quality SPED programs, improved support and professional developments for our paras, expanded implementation of our restorative practices, and greater shared responsibility among all teachers for instruction of students with special needs. So I think at one point in time you all asked about some of the work that I do, transitioning. So I've transitioned things previously, and these are all areas that had been in the department that are now going to be transitioned to other administrators so that the Director of Special Ed can focus on special ed. So with that, I too want to give thanks to some people. And #1, it's the kids. It was always about the kids as the North Star. The kids are the ones that matter. That's what has been my passion and what I have tried very hard to instill in all of the staff that I work with, that it's all about the children first. Many families, I've worked with hundreds of people, and they have been remarkable. Just some remarkable people that work and live in Evanston and that I have been able to have relationships with. Obviously, the special educators are incredible. There's so much inspiration that comes from you all and what you do and who you are as people and the commitment that this is that you make to children. The people that I supervise the supervisors, Mary, Marlene, there's Jill, John. These are incredibly passionate, committed, caring people about kids and wanting to do the best things every day. Cabinet. This is the hardest working group of people I have ever met in my entire life. You guys work so hard and are inspirational to me and have been part of what is my motivation, my looking forward, my thinking through things, my making other decisions about how I dealt with things, and I can't thank you enough. And there's Paul. I've worked under 9 superintendents, and I am the 9th special ed director in the time that I've been in the district. Paul came to the district with the commitment to the mental health and social and emotional needs of children. And he developed the strategic plan and supported the development of school climate teams, supported the plan to write the Head Start grant after CETA pulled out, supported the expansion of cell programming, supported the development of SEAL classes, understood the need for additional social workers and psychologists in the district based on increasing mental health needs, and agreed to the idea of making District 65 a restorative practices district. To the school board and the community of Evanston, this has been my life's work. I really want to thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joyce, and to all of the educators that spoke and are still here. I think there's never been a question as to the amount of work that everybody does. This is clearly, like Joyce said, this is a passion for you, and you can see that in how you speak of your students and your families and the work that you do. So thank you for all of that, and thank you, Joyce. I guess I'll open up. Are there questions, comments?
Well, I guess I would say there aren't any questions. I got to leave on no more questions. But Joyce, just actually you walking through the many, many, many things that the team and yourself and everybody in this room and in this district accomplished over the last 8 years. I think that's a healthy process for us to hopefully go through more often, and not necessarily in light of someone retiring. Because, it's good to take a step back and just realize in the midst of all we have to do, all that has been done and continues to be done, to work towards the environment we want for all of our kids and the success that we want for all of our kids. And so I thank you for that and giving us a moment to reflect on that, and you for your professionalism and your ability to be so creative in the way you look at things and always demand something more. I think I've found that in the short time, 6 or so years that I've been able to work with you. So very much appreciate it.
Thanks, Jan. Okay, well, thank you very much again for the presentation. We will move on to our last discussion item, which is priorities for the next school year. So,
And I'm going to kick the conversation off, and then we're going to have the entire team participate in this, because this has been a team effort to think about priorities as we move forward to the following school year. Give me a second here. So let me kick this off and do it within the context of what we typically do at the last board meeting of a school year, at least what we've typically done over the last 3 years, which is to look at the strategic plan, and all of the work that we're going to present tonight is within the context of the strategic plan. And then through popcorn style with each of the board members, hear some of the issues and concerns and ideas about priorities moving forward. I think as we progress through this past year and over the last couple of years, we've recognized that we need to focus even more within our strategic framework to be able to make a difference in the lives of kids, and especially kids who have the greatest needs, and especially our Black children and our Latinx kids. So the team and I have spent a good period of time focusing on how do we get to really engage in priorities that we can move forward, that the priorities that we have a lens on as we move forward, and that's what we're presenting tonight. This is still a work in progress. We still have work plans to, we still have to hear your comments and concerns. We still have work plans to develop. We still have more work to do on what's the work that we're going to let go of to be able to get to the priorities that we're talking about. But we feel as though to really respond to the needs of our children, to the needs of our families, and to the needs that we have as professional educators, that we have to go even in a more focused way within our strategic plan. So with that, we're going to do a little bit of a round robin. I'm going to start off by asking Beatrice to start on a little bit of the background, and then we'll go to Joaquin on some of the current work and initiatives, and then go from there.
So the strategic plan was developed with input from over 2,000 stakeholders and has led our work for the last several years, which you all know. Last year, we reviewed the strategic plan again, and this time we used an equity lens, which led to the development of the strategy equity reflection document, which really lifted the equity work that was embedded within the strategic plan. We have a very robust equity agenda in our district, which has led to intensive professional learning on issues regarding race, racism, bias, and this has been led with all of our staff throughout District 65. We've also used an equity lens to review some of our practices and policies, which we felt were negatively impacting students of color. Just 2 examples would be the dress code policy and the discipline policy. We recognize, as Paul just stated, that even with all of our efforts to this point, it's not enough. So moving forward, we're elevating and deepening the most important parts of high-quality teaching and learning in a way that will definitely isolate race and will have the greatest direct impact on improving outcomes for our students of color.
Thank you, Beatrice. So speaking to current work and initiatives, our current strategic work and initiatives are aligned to the 5 priority areas of the strategic plan. The table in the memo provides a summary of major initiatives for each section of the strategic plan. These initiatives are all currently being implemented in the current year of 18-19. More details on these initiatives and how we approach implementing each section of the strategic plan can be found in the strategy equity reflection. So in these 5 pieces, high quality teaching and learning, thriving workforce, safe and supportive schools, in-school climate, family and community engagement, financial sustainability. And these specific milestones for 2018-19 school year, which describe the steps that we are taking to implement the initiatives described in the table that I mentioned, can be found in the board planning calendar. This document outlines quarterly milestones for these initiatives as well as quarterly operational milestones. This work has seen the connection between teaching and learning and the alignment of the current equity work this year. The community engagement piece, specifically for me and my heart and mind from Board of Education meetings, specifically our December meeting, when parents, community members, community partners, a student named Olivia and her mom Gina from Haven, spoke openly about the experiences of racism in our schools. This, I feel, really ignited the movement in our planning. We engaged in community circles, equity listening tour of 18 sites. This is the current work. We are listening to the community, and we need to advocate for them. As a new member of D65, I feel I must recognize that there is good work being done by our passionate, dedicated teachers, support staff, administration, and the Board of Education currently in place. This must be acknowledged. That being said, our academic achievement disparities, disaggregated by race, are still ever present and are directly impacting our Black and Latinx children we are charged with serving. The agreed upon acceleration to serve our children that need us most is paramount. My colleagues will map out, as stated in this memo, that we are moving our Black and Latinx students to a central position and guiding light. They are our North Star. Thank you. Kylie will now walk us through on how we plan to measure our progress.
Great, thank you. So in terms of measuring our progress, we recognize the importance of sharing out our progress on an ongoing basis so that we can clearly articulate how we are doing on our pathway to achieving the North Star. We have lots of structures in place in the district to measure our progress, including all of the quarterly reports, the scorecards, the Achievement and Accountability Report, board reports, community reports, special reports that we prepare, also things that we do for principals and school leaders to help them utilize and inform their work with teachers within their buildings to use data to inform instruction. We will continue this progress by examining our data, disaggregating by race and ethnicity, so we're centering race in our work, in order to really understand and continue to evaluate our areas of progress and our areas for continued growth. I think it's important to note that we will also continue to evaluate and refine our methods of reporting progress, particularly in light of the priorities we are about to discuss. These priorities may require that we think differently about our reporting structures and about the types of data that we're using to inform our progress. And I would also like to add that by focusing on the instructional core, we're using research and evidence to help us think strategically about what really matters for transforming outcomes for students. That instructional core is really where gains in achievement are going to occur. And by focusing and strengthening teaching and learning in our schools, we can really make a significant difference in outcomes for our students of color and our other students, but in particular our students of color. I'd also like to highlight that we are going to further and deepen our supports for school leaders, our supports for families and helping them understand the data and the information that the district is using and that the schools are using, and work with community partners to make sure that they also are understanding our progress on these new refocused strategic priorities. They're not new, they're really refocusing. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to...
Just one more comment. We are committed to coming back in the August board meeting to engage in a conversation around what the Achievement and Accountability Report will look like as we move forward. So that's a vital part of this effort.
Yes, that will be something that we do. And to highlight what Paul is saying, I also am going to be approaching that strategically. I'm going to be reaching out to community organizations. I'm developing a list. I'm going to be reaching out to school leaders. I really don't want these decisions to be made in isolation of how people might be using this information to kind of monitor longitudinally district performance over time. And so I really want to be rigorous about how we make those changes in an inclusive and thoughtful way that supports a broad base of the community. But that's a discussion for another time. But thank you, Paul. I appreciate that. And I'm going to pass the mic over to my colleague, LaTersha, who's going to talk a bit about our prioritization process that we went through in order to come to these focal areas.
So good evening. I think it's important to note that, as my colleague Joaquin stated, we have been operating in urgency and looking to move in action on what is so important to all of us here. Our prioritization process started in around December through cabinet meetings weekly as well as monthly retreats. We started a process with analyzing data obviously interviews, observations, surveys, to really generate a root cause. So in other words, we looked at the data, we made some speculations from that information, and trying to understand what was driving some of the results that we were seeing, and then made some determinations on what to focus on. We spent a half day basically cycling what was then developed as a problem of practice through the Racial Equity Impact Tool. We interviewed stakeholders as part of our data collection in terms of the problem of practice, and got their feedback, made improvements and revisions. That process for the problem of practice included a determination to see and recognize the important endeavors that were and accomplishments from the strategic plan, but with intentionality on elevating teaching and learning. Putting equity in practice through instruction is what I like to say. Looking at academic rigor, strong instructional practices, relevant and engaging learning experiences, and high expectations, with the priority on student achievement for our Black and Latinx students. We also noted within our problem of practice information as it relates to our organizational health and climate concerns. 3 highlights from that problem of practice. We want to ensure that we are collaborative decision makers, engaging our community and stakeholders. We want to ensure that two-way communication loops are present throughout our processes. And we also want to acknowledge the impact that external pressures play on the work that we are committed to do as a community. And I'll pass it over to my colleague.
If I could add one more thing that we actually talked about in the memo, and we evoked the work of John Diamond, who's an Evanstonian, and Amanda Lewis, who've written the book Despite the Best Intentions, and they talk very clearly about opportunity hoarders and those who want to experience the public school system for the sole benefit of their own children as opposed to the greater good, or as opposed to what we're actually going to focus on in our priorities, which are Black and Latinx kids. And so we will use their writing and their lens as we move forward on the work that we're suggesting that we want to go deeper on in the instructional core and on the priority strategies. And that's a segue to Stacy.
All right, thank you, Paul. In light of the defined root cause and problem of practice, as a team, we work to create a revised and increasingly focused set of strategies. At its heart, we know that we need to make sure the prioritization is deeply and directly connected to the day in, day out work in our classrooms. And even more specifically, we know that the focus needs to directly address the concept of the instructional core, Cohen and Ball's concept of the instructional core. Cohen and Ball assert that the learning is influenced by and occurs as a result of the interaction between teachers, students, and content. To improve learning outcomes, you need to create change that impacts all 3 of these areas: the student experience, teacher practices, and the materials that are used. The Cabinet has arrived at a set of 7 strategies that are focused on directly influencing and supporting work to strengthen the instructional core and the elements that make up the core. Strategy 1, ensure access to grade-level, standards-aligned assignments for Tier 1 instruction that are rigorous and improve learning for Black and Latinx students. This strategy addresses the need to ensure that students that are not yet at grade level require both grade-level instruction and challenge, as well as differentiated support to access grade-level learning. Off-grade-level interventions may be needed, but should not replace access to grade-level instruction. Strategy 2, lead system-wide professional learning and implementation support of cognitively rigorous and culturally responsive instructional practices. Grade-level and beyond assignments should be engaging, cognitively rigorous, and require students to dig in and be challenged as learners. One of Zaretta Hammond's practice areas is information processing, which is focused on ensuring that students are experiencing and succeeding on cognitively rigorous tasks with greater levels of independence over time. Zaretta Hammond is clear that if learning is not occurring, it's not culturally responsive. Strategy 3, ask students and families directly about their goals and school experiences to inform ongoing strategy development and adjust as appropriate. Engaging Black and Latinx students and families on an ongoing basis to inform our work helps us to understand the impact of our actions. Our equity work teaches us that our impact is far more important and may be different than our intentions. Family and student engagement helps us to understand the true impact of the work and to gather perspective on alternative actions that may be more impactful for our Black and Latinx students. Strategy 4, lead system-wide professional learning and implementation support of restorative practices to create environments that are intellectually and socially safe for learning. Restorative practices learning requires us to shift some of our patterns and habits to engage with adults and students differently across our school and district climates. This requires training and space for ongoing learning for adults, while holding urgency with the understanding that our actions impact the daily lives of our students. Strategy 5, foster a culture of collaboration and trust that authentically engages staff to increase student achievement for Black and Latinx students. By isolating race regularly and consistently in our work, the district strives to better understand the racial impact of our work in the local, immediate contexts. This will require us to build on the equity learning the district has engaged in over the past 2 years with the goal of creating a culture of collaboration where a balance of voices are heard, hard truths are spoken, teams problem solve together, and we all lead with informed action. Strategy 6, create structures and processes to support consistent and effective two-way communication with staff about district-level decisions and actions. In a system that's doing deep and impactful work to shift long-standing historical inequities, there must be structures and processes that allow for two-way communication. We need to learn from each other in our system, which means that information must flow between teams, among colleagues, across buildings, and up and down the system. Great work, feedback, and ideas need to be able to rise from classrooms and schools. Strategy 7, engage in long-term financial planning to ensure we have the necessary funding for our priorities on the instructional core. A system committed to change needs a solid financial foundation to support the direction. Provide the necessary resources for learning, collaboration, time, and expertise. This is work that must be prioritized over several years and will take a steady commitment. These 7 strategies bring together important areas of our work: a commitment to equity and culturally responsive practices, an environment that can support learning, communication, and collaboration to drive improved academic outcomes for our Black and Latinx students. Joyce will talk next about the work to prioritize to help support this focus.
So we saw in identifying what we really want to focus on, that to give that the sharp attention that we want to give it, that we needed to deprioritize some areas. And we had heard that from the school board as well as our staff and our team, that we needed to think through that process and what was the right things to keep on the plate and what we need to make more room for in order to really do this work well. So we went through a process over several weeks where there was a set of criteria that we developed and were very monitoring in terms of looking at our work and looking at things that were not in honor of this work that we really wanted to focus on. We did make a commitment, though, in negotiations that we want to have an agreement to have a committee with representatives from DEC, school leaders, and district-level administrators to redesign and simplify the structure of our school-based teams and committees. And that, we hope, will be a formal recommendation by that in February of 2020. So in these areas of work that we wanted to discontinue, we want to really align our principal professional development to the focused areas and discontinue several principal professional development areas that were not explicitly related to our priorities. In terms of some of our school-based planning teams, school work plans, climate teams, that what we want, again, is to focus on supporting school teams as they lead implementation of our priorities, and we will discontinue the MTSS Advisory Committee at this time. We're talked about shifts in our curriculum work. We had previously been doing some revisions to SEAL Advisory 2.0 and computer science. We decided to put that on hold at this point in time again to focus. And some other areas that we discussed putting a halt or pausing to, that although we wanted to continue to use our District 65 ambassadors to support our recruitment work efforts, we will discontinue the effort to expand this group. We will discontinue district-led staff affinity groups next year. We will not begin implementation of a parent mentor program next year. We will discontinue integrating executive functioning work with digital tools and platforms. Discontinue our work to develop strong start to kindergarten measures for second language learners. We will discontinue our school supplies partnership with COPE. We'll discontinue the Superintendent Community Cafe series, and we will discontinue the fall community budget presentations. This is a start, and I think what we want is to have a conversation with you, the board, as to other areas that we can jointly discuss in terms of deprioritization.
And let me stress that this is a start. So this is we know that we have a lot more work to do over the summer to build this list so that we can focus on the 7 strategies that Stacy outlined. Amberly, do you want to?
So as you've heard this evening, we have taken account for the systemic and school-based demands that need our focus and reorganization for Black and Latinx students. We will work to collaborate in building trust to create calm, restorative, and enriched classroom and school environments that ensure our Black and Latinx students receive appropriate grade level, standards-based materials, and rigorous culturally responsive instruction. Based on continued engagement with parents, teachers, students, and affected families, we will sharpen our focus on the District 65 strategic plan through the 7 system-wide strategies you have heard this evening. This will not be easy, but it is necessary if we want to successfully see different results. Our plan elevates teaching and learning and a professional obligation and a moral imperative to engage our educators, families, and students, all stakeholders, in moving to seeing our students achieve at the highest level. Over the summer months, district-level departments will identify how the work of their departments supports these system-wide strategies, and we will create work plans to implement their part of the work next year. We'll also work with principals to guide their focus on these priorities that they can then bring to their school improvement and climate teams. It is not our hope, but rather a commitment to a collaborative and accountable plan that we not put forward. We seek the board's support and partnership on elevating and deepening this work to accelerate the outcomes we know that can be realized.
Okay, thank you. With that, I'll turn to board members with questions or comments. Joey, you look like you have one.
Sure. I think it's commendable, and I know it's difficult to come up with a list of things that you're going to not do, because you were doing them for a reason. The question was, or the ask was for board support, and I think I support anything that's not on your strategic list of actions or closely related to that, to take off your plate, to get the work done, because there's too much to let other things, and no offense to the gentleman that was here this evening that spoke about math acceleration, but that's not the big rock. It's just not the big rock. And if that means that you end up turning away people who are getting upset over some of those things, I think that's, as one board member, that is certainly a political battle I'm willing to accept. So. thank you for your plan.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So I also want to thank you for the depth of the plan and the clarity. And I think that earlier, despite the best intentions, was referenced. And that's been on my mind because of the series that happened over the year. But, and thanks to the Next Steps Committee that hosted that series. But also because of the resolution that the City Council was considering tonight, the commitment to end structural racism and achieve racial equity. You know, there's the ostensible policy and plan, and then there's the performative. And I think that this list of priorities gets at the bridge that needs to be made between the ostensive, which is the ideal policy, and the performative, which is what actually happens in action. And a few years ago, when I first joined the board, there was not a clear and cogent commitment to equity or conversation about racial equity. I think there was still, even at the time, some discomfort with naming race. And so there's been, I think, a lot of work that we've done on the ostensive, which is just being able to, in policy, name the role that race is playing and the role that structural racism has played in our community through our schools. And I think what we've been experiencing, and particularly at the December meeting where we were talking about what it would look like to have anti-racist schools and hearing from our community about the experiences that they had that were not anti-racist, but that were in fact quite racist. What we're hearing is that there's a gap between the ostensive policy and the ideal that we have, and then the performative experience that folks are having of our policies and our statements and et cetera. So I appreciated the list of priorities in going deep, but also being clear about what are the things that we need to go deeper on, we need to systematically embed, and what are the things that we need to deprioritize? What are the things that we need to spend less attention on so that we can address these systematic gaps? And I think, you know, if we want a community that is truly committed to ending structural racism and achieving racial equity, these are the types of conversations we need to have about how our systems are functioning or not, and how we need to consider how we distribute power and resources and access, so that we can end what was baked into the system intentionally, and that folks are all very used to, and that will make some folks uncomfortable or make some folks confused or uncertain. I think that this provides clarity to that action and that commitment, and I appreciate it. I would love to see the marriage between the priorities list and some of the other proposals that we talked about, which were the APs and special services combinations, some of the financial considerations that we need to make in order to realize these priorities, I would like to see those things come together because we do have some fiscal challenges. And what I don't want us to do as a governance body is to publicly make commitment to doing things that we cannot sustain. That is certainly an element of the experience of structural racism in our country and in our community. So I would like to see the combination of what we realize are the important priorities in terms of the focus of work, but also what are the investments that need to be made in order to realize those priorities. Thank you all.
Thank you. I really appreciate that your comments writ large, but the sustaining this work cannot be one and done. And that's where, again, we have to challenge ourselves. We're admittedly, the list on deprioritizing is short, and it admittedly needs to be long so that we can actually get there. And that's, again, the work before us as we do our work plans for the summer and move forward. And again, with your support to bring forward, here are some of the things we're not going to do. We're going to put a pause on so that we can move forward. And again, I want to highlight the work that we did in bargaining, the work to think about the committees and to really get the committees down from this large to this large and focus on the priorities is going to be the next step of our work.
And I just very quickly want to add that the interest-based bargaining that you all engaged in and that so many people collaborated to contribute to. And I hate to list everyone because I feel like it's impossible to give an exhaustive list and there's always folks who are left off of it, but it was an incredible commitment by a lot of people to realizing these priorities and putting children and families at the center of what we do. And it's wonderful to celebrate that accomplishment and look at these priorities as realizing some important commitments to children and families tonight. Thank y'all.
I appreciate this list and this work. I think Anya captured some of it, very well. I think what I would push on, obviously, there's something that seems, of course, obvious about we focus on the instructional core. We are a school district. But I think we need to be clear that we all have the same understanding of what the instructional core is. I think what I don't really see in this, and what I think we've done so much work on over recent years, is around social and emotional learning. I would argue that without that social and emotional learning, that's kind of really as part of the a strong part of the instructional core, because children, if they don't feel like they belong in school, like they are welcome, like they are connected to their schools and their classrooms and to the curriculum, then it's hard for other learning to happen. So to me, it isn't clear what's meant by focusing on the instructional core, and I think it's important that we all have a shared understanding of what that means. And whether, be clear, are we moving away from some of the social emotional work that we've invested time into? And if that's the strategic decision that's being made, that's fine. I just think we need to, I don't think that's fine, but I think we need to be clear that that's what we're doing. In terms of the specific work that's being moved off of the plate. And again, I think, to what Joey said, I think it's commendable to come through with a list of things that we are committed to saying, they're important, but they aren't they don't align strongly enough to what we're trying to do, and so we're going to move them aside, at least for the time being. I would be curious to know, or I guess what I'm not really seeing in this, and I don't know how much the teachers union, how much other staff was involved in creating this list. I think one of the things that we've heard extensively over the years is that teachers have a lot on their plate. There are all these initiatives, and there's constantly something being added to teachers' workloads. And I'm not seeing where that shift is happening, so that the people who are in the classrooms can focus on these things that we're saying are the priorities that are going to advance student outcomes. So I would encourage and push for greater collaboration with the people who are in the buildings, who are in the classrooms, who are working with students every day to make sure that the actual day-to-day initiatives that we have are the right ones, and that as we're thinking about shifting work, we have to think about shifting work throughout the system, not just at one particular level. I think that's...
I appreciate your comments, and as I look at Meg and Lisa in the audience, the commitment that we have is to actually work with our union colleagues and the educators in the system to actually think about other places where this list can grow on deprioritizing so we can be focused. So yes, we will.
Okay. Anybody else? Candace?
I just wanted to offer, I think, from board perspective, or from one board member's perspective, an area where we might consider pruning some more, and that is, I think, to your comment, Kylie, as we look forward in measuring our progress, something that I've observed is, and again, we had the greatest intentions. We have 4 different ways that we're tracking and reporting on and talking about the strategic plan, and some of them are redundant in that the same data is being looked at multiple times and it hasn't changed. And it's disconcerting because, A, we look at the same data multiple times and it's not new, and we're not going to find anything new from that data. So and there may be, that frees up opportunities to be more strategic about how can you improve instruction, or what might we, what might we want to delve more deeply into that's actually going to impact instruction, or from resources that are now being used to report out what we've done and what has already happened. And we do that from an activity base by saying we did all the things, or most of the things that we said we were going to do. Here we did them, right? And it's great, but I think we have to accept that with a more honed list, then that should affect also the reporting that comes out of it, and free up resources to focus on addressing the problem of practice and not necessarily reporting out to us what we've done. So that would be my request to the board, as well as, just a suggestion as you're thinking about other things and ways that we could rationalize some of the reporting, or some of the work that's being done to refocus it on those things that are going to impact practice. And then one of the questions, and I guess this kind of relates to Anya's comment about marriage to resources. We don't talk specifically in these lead strategies about Tier 2 or Tier 3 instruction, although we do address it, I think, from restorative practices, those types of practices. I'm just curious as to, when you're talking about, kind of the standards and looking at problems of practice, and one of the large outside of Tier 1, one of the major investments we currently have in terms of at least literacy is reading intervention, reading recovery. That's in terms of a large resource of people, of effort. It feeds into MTSS, obviously, through those plans. And I wonder whether that's an area that in terms of our problem of practice and looking at the pedagogy, the approach, I don't know. Ask whether that came up, because it is a very large commitment and a large investment that we make across the system. And it's also, for those kids that are not yet at where they want to be and where we want them to be, that is, in addition to Tier 1, is a primary resource. It's an intervention. So do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes,
Yes,
please. Thank you. Thank you for recognizing that there is a lot of resources and effort and support put into a lot of the reporting. I also have seen some areas of redundancy. I think if we could have the support of the board to work to be more strategic about how we're using our limited resources in more effective ways, I would love to be able to devote more time and effort and energy into working with school leaders and really using that information to drive practice. And it would be great if we could use our resources and really bring them to bear on things that are going to directly manifest in improvements for kids. I think it's really important that we support public reporting and that we're accountable to the board and that we're sharing that information. I believe in that as a public servant and as someone who also is a parent of a child in the public school system. I want to see information about the progress of my school district, but I also want my school district to be thinking strategically about how they apply resources in ways that are most directly impacting outcomes for kids. And the opportunity costs are pretty significant in having multitudes of reports and ongoing repeated reports. So that's my 2 cents on that, and thank you. And if you all support that, that would be wonderful, because we can devote more supports to students.
All right. And in regards to reading recovery and reading intervention, so there was a reference, so number one, when we worked on prioritization and problem of practice, we really wanted to start by focusing on Tier 1, because Tier 1 impacts and affects all students. And then a piece of what I referred to as we went through the priorities was also the fact that grade level students that are not yet at grade level need high quality Tier 1 instruction. They need access to that challenge. They need access to that learning. And that the interventions that do occur need to be outside of that. They cannot replace that grade level Tier 1 instruction. They need to be in addition to. And so there's a commitment to figuring out how we make sure that high quality instruction is available to all students while figuring out off-grade level interventions. In the process of doing this, we will need to step back and take a look at the fidelity of all of our interventions and work to see how we can best align resources to student needs. Some of the work we've done over the last couple of years is to really work to become more responsive to the needs of students by kind of broadening the range of interventions that our specialists do offer. So we are looking at those things and trying to figure out the best way to line up resources with our student needs. This problem starts with high quality Tier 1 for all students, and then underneath it, how do we align the resources we have to then do the other work that we need to do in regards to supporting students that are not yet at grade level. Thank you, Stacey.
I want to echo the thanks for again, working on this and then paring down some of the work so we can really focus on outcomes for our most marginalized students. I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate the strategy around asking students and families directly about their goals, right, and school experiences to inform ongoing strategy development and adjusting as appropriate. I think that's where we should start as a school district. We should start, as parents, right? That it's you want the best for your child. We want our kids to do better than we did, right? Always a step up from where we were at. And in asking that question, that I think is going to really move the needle. because we're valuing and giving dignity to children and their families in regards to what, and listening to them and what they want in regards to further outcomes for children. So if we just start there, I think it's just that in and of itself, that question is going to take us really far. At the same time, we also have to take this bioecological view, right? Is that, again, we know, and that question addresses this bioecological view, is that we're looking at, that we know that children are couched by family and are couched by communities. So then, what I'd like to see in this, as we, again, this is a work in progress, I understand, but, again, how do we leverage, and continue to leverage our relationships with Northwestern University, the city of Evanston, because, again, these are going to be future adult Evanstonians who we want to contribute to this great city. Its economy, its creativity. So whatever we can do to map out their success with at the ETHS, right, and measure that, and map out their success in college or at a trade school, and eventually, whatever we can do to tie all of those connections in that bioecological view. For them being these children who are part of families, who are part of this larger community, is another way to measure success and moves beyond just reading and writing, reading and math test scores. Again, we still need that. We gotta do the reading and math. I get it, but I'm looking forward to an achievement report that kind of covers all of that. So as we think about how we cover, what children's outcomes look like, let's really be very thoughtful about that and try to take this comprehensive view of child development and making sure that all of this is developmentally appropriate in regards to children moving through our educational system, right, from early childhood on to college. And again, we have those relationships already that we're working on. But let's really think about leveraging, the partnership with Northwestern, and then to try and helping us make those connections with ETHS, and then the 202 work and the Cradle to Career work. How do we tie it all together, right, to ensure that we have great outcomes for our kiddos in Evanston?
So, a couple quick thoughts as you talk, Sergio. One, work that we're doing with the Northwestern Evanston Education Research Alliance. As we move forward on our problem of practice and our focus strategies, it then helps to shape that work that's really going to try to trace how kids are moving forward on their trajectory from 65 to 202. Two, and again, these are just ideas that you stimulated. Yes on all of the above, but we may come back and say we don't want to work in this part of the community, we want to work in that part of the community. Mm-hmm. And I just want to, we're going to take the license to do that because focus is focus. And so, I won't say where or what because we don't have it up our sleeves yet, but maybe we've spent so much time on A, and what we really need to do is spend time on B and C. So we'll pause on A. And then the final thing, I appreciate your opening with the asking students and families. It makes me, we didn't underscore the research base of the work that we did. The research base, as Stacy pointed out on the instructional core, comes from seminal work by Cohen and Ball and Dick Elmore from Harvard. So there's just a rich literature on what the instructional core is. And then as we work on the different strategies, we really tapped into a paper called The Opportunity Myth by TNTP, which is a national organization that really has shown where by stressing grade level expectations and rigorous content, achievement gaps, opportunity gaps have actually been addressed. And so embedded in this work is a research base that is actually really important as we drive forward.
And just to expand a little bit on that as well. So I was just reading an article today on The Atlantic that talks about and I'll share it with all of you. It talks about why public education isn't. It is one of the means to find success in the society, but it doesn't guarantee success, right? So then if you take a longitudinal view of education in American history, right now we have the most high school graduates ever in history. And that's for all groups, Latinx, Black, white. You know, educational achievement is actually, if you take the longitudinal view, and then since we've started measuring, we're actually doing incredibly well. The problem is economic inequality. So what happens is that, so we live in Evanston, right? And it's a district, it's a city that has folks who have the resources, most of us do, not all of us, to be able to have the time to have these discussions and make these plans. So that is, I think, so the article talks about how that is what the difference is. So then that is partly why I talk, well, that's a lot why I talk about, again, these collaborations with all these, you know, institutions within our city, because that, at the end of the day, is what the new research, the longitudinal research on education is talking about, is that, again, we really need to create these multi-institutional focuses on where folks are going to end up from childhood all the way up to adulthood, and then how can we back map? And I think the interesting thing about the NERA work with Northwestern, that's, you know, how do we back map? How do we start from a successful Black adult with a degree, and then back map it all the way to our processes, right? Because I think what we do is then, you know, we kind of just, we don't really consider that far, those outcomes that are so far out. You know, we kind of just focus on what we do here, what we have control over. But we really need to, I think, as an institution, really try to, again, continue leveraging these relationships that we have with the folks that we're working with, City of Evanston, Northwestern, to really impact outcomes for our kids. And it just behooves us to continue to do that. And I understand we need to focus on what we have to focus on. I mean, that is what we have to do. Instructional core, yeah, absolutely, I agree. But again, let's not lose the relationships that we have and then really leverage those relationships.
I had another question. And that was, one of the things that was mentioned in deprioritizing was the MTSS advisory. But we also just had some conversation about the importance of making sure we have strong Tier 1 instruction, but also appropriate interventions at Tier 2 and Tier 3. And MTSS is meant to manage that information, correct? How does deprioritizing the MTSS advisory committee impact utilizing MTSS with fidelity and making sure we're implementing the interventions and tracking that and sharing that information?
So I think we're in a place where, you know, one of the things we need to do is to think about the different meetings and structures that we do have throughout the district, and what are the ways in which we can use the existing meetings and structures to achieve our goals. MTSS is supported by problem-solving teams at each of our school sites. The coordinator of MTSS from the district works with the principal and the problem-solving teams at each individual site to support that work. Additionally, one of the things we've done is frame that in our departments, math and literacy, that the department work is Tier 1 through Tier 3. And we have disciplinary standing committees, math, ELA, science, social studies. The work of that committee can be focused on Tier 1 through Tier 3. So we have really two other structures where we can have better, more embedded, school-embedded conversations and disciplinary conversations to ensure that MTSS work continues to progress and be improved. The standing committee had been very, very helpful for advising on the past tool and helping move us to the new tool and advising the rollout of that tool. We now, I think, have structures in our other places to be able to gather information as we go forward.
Okay, so the commitment to utilizing MTSS with fidelity is not going away?
No. Correct. No. When we talk about ensuring that students have access to grade level learning and that there's students that are not yet at grade level, ensuring that we're providing both levels of support, it keeps that as a high priority.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, everyone. It's given the lateness of the hour, I think we're probably all past the point of being able to, of coherence, at least I know I am. So with no further business, I adjourn this final board meeting of the 2018-19 school year at 11:04 PM. Thank you all.